All right, all good.
All right, it's 6:31 p.m. on October 16th, 2024. Having quorum, I'll call the item one, call the Bridgewater Planning Board to order. This evening, we have a couple of public hearings and a joint public hearing. Before we go into that, I'm going to read the governor's order. This meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the provisions of the open meeting law pursuant to the governor's approval of a supplemental budget bill. Temporary provisions pertaining to the open meeting law have been extended to March 31st, 2025. Specifically, this further extension allows public bodies to continue holding meetings remotely without a quorum of the public body physically present at a meeting location and to provide adequate and alternative access to remote meetings. The language of this extension does not make any substantive changes to the open meeting law other than extending the expiration date of the temporary provisions regarding remote meetings from March 31st, 2023 to March 31st, 2025. Members of the public are encouraged to participate remotely and shall address the questions to the chair of the board or through our host this evening, who is Mr. O'Brien. The following members of the Bridgewater Planning Board are participating remotely this evening. I'm Patrick Driscoll, the chair, Mr. Michael McDonald, the vice chair. Mr. Stephen Geller will be joining us shortly. Ms. Astrid Rojas, Mr. Ted Haley, and we have an alternate member this evening, Ms. MJ Spagone. During the meeting, all votes will be roll call votes. The following Bridgewater Town staff will also be participating with us remotely this evening. Mr. Robert Rulli, the Community Economic Development Director. Mr. Shane O'Brien, the Town Planner. Mr. Greg Tansey, the Town Engineer. Mr. Stephen Solari, the Building Commissioner. At this time, everyone's mics are muted. The board's mics will be unmuted through the whole meeting, and as items appear on the agenda, the project's representatives' mics will be unmuted. If this is a public hearing and allows public comment, we ask you to use the chat feature to ask your question by listing your name, your address, and your question. The chair or the host will recognize questions in order. You can also use the raise my hand feature in the participant menu, and you'll be unmuted when the chair or the host recognizes you. Again, please state your name and your address before making a comment or asking a question. If you're on the phone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. So we have item 2. This is a joint public hearing for a zoning amendment this evening with the CED committee. I can open that public hearing.
All the members are here, Mr. Chairman.
For the planning board. And are all the members here for the CED committee?
Yes.
So, okay.
Two of our members are here, I believe.
And Dr. Perry or Mr. Chase, if you want to open your meeting and then open the public hearing.
Yes, that's fine.
Oh, Ms. Robinson, I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. Actually, I was going to say, yeah, Fred, if you, I'm happy to defer to you since unfortunately I'm still in the car. So thank you.
All right, very well. My name is Fred Chase, a member of the Bridgewater Town Council representing District 3. I'm here this evening with two other members of the Town Council representing the Community and Economic Development Committee of the Town Council to participate in this joint hearing with the Planning Board. And I note that the time is now 6:34, and I will call to order this meeting of the Community and Economic Development Committee of the Bridgewater Town Council.
Okay, so both hearings are open. The first item under the joint hearing is zoning ordinance D FY 25-001. This is a proposed senior village housing development zoning ordinance amendment pursuant to the senior housing development, creating and or amending section 8.6 of the senior housing, section 8.7 senior village development, section 11 definitions, table of use regulations, and table of dimensional requirements. Mr. O'Brien, you worked on this, so I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. So we workshopped the concept of a 55 plus housing ordinance. So I'll do a brief presentation. I know we've done a couple presentations over the summer with the planning board, but I'm glad to see the CED committee. And I just wanted to kind of give a quick overview with my shared screen of this ordinance of the 55 plus. I apologize. Let me get the arrow together. So this isn't necessarily a new idea. I know that there was proposals for 55 plus housing within the town in the past. mobile home elderly community approved in 2000. There was some inclusion of senior housing recently with the recodification, as well as a proposal for an adult retirement community in the planned development district, which was withdrawn before a public hearing. So currently in place, our senior housing ordinance kind of covers assisted living, continuing care, independent living facility, as well as long-term care facility. But kind of digesting what it says in the definition, it doesn't really state that these senior housing facilities are for ownership. They're essentially a facility providing rent, so essentially a larger owner to have seniors 55 plus to rent to them. Similar to our manufactured housing elderly community, none of which being under singular house ownership. And I think what I've seen through a lot of 55 plus ordinances, as well as talking to people who are considering aging in place, is that they want to be able to sell their home in Bridgewater while also purchasing maybe a smaller home, a better designed home, or a community that better suits their lifestyle. Not necessarily sell their home and rent to a different individual. That may be the case for some persons and some interests, which we still have the option for. The goal of kind of this housing is to essentially allow for home ownership for these individuals. So, as stated before, we know about High Pond Estates and Stone Meadow, but these are, of course, for rent. So, kind of the goals of this objective, like I said, is to just kind of provide another option, just to kind of have another variety of housing options within the community that's not necessarily correlated with the senior housing ordinances or the mobile home elderly community district. So this would allow for duplex, triplexes, townhouses for ownership. Look to promote open space and common space, similar to our open space in conservation development ordinance, as well as walkable neighborhoods. The idea of zero-step universal design, design for all, promoting and requiring first floor master bedrooms, an egress in and egress out of the community, as well as requiring these not to be on smaller sites, but kind of larger sites dependent on the zoning district. So one of which is that we're looking for land requirements. So if it be in the RAB district, the expectation is that you would have at least 15 acres, RC district 10 acres, and RD district, which would be 7 acres. And these are the districts that we would expect, or we would want, based on the ordinance that we're proposing, to be only focused in those districts. So we don't want to see this in the commercial zone. We don't want to see this in any other industrial zones or any other overlay zones. The expectation is that these developments be in the RA, B, C, and D districts. So looking at definitions, we would be adding a couple definitions as part of this ordinance, defining what a townhouse is, better defining an exclusive use area, as well as kind of adding a little bit of adjustments to the senior housing definition as current, and taking out the word, taking out the senior housing facility subcategory, and kind of including active adult senior village and senior housing laws as their own definitions. So back over here, just in terms of the land table requirements, if anyone wants to check kind of the full ordinance, I'm just kind of summarizing it for the sake of time and, everyone's kind of consideration. So looking at this, having different percentages based on districts, RD, RC have a lower percentage because they seem to be more around the inner core area, whereas the residential A, B districts, there are a higher expectation for both lot size, frontage, as well as shared open space due to kind of the rural nature of these areas. So this process, the expectation is that it'd be a special permit through the planning board. So the development would be a special permit through the planning board, similar to kind of what we do with the open space and conservation development, with the idea that the design of these, the site plans themselves be similar to a preliminary plan. So designed in a sense that it's similar to a subdivision, but with the expectation that they're approved as a special permit. So extraordinarily similar, and following the same process as something as similar as we did with Oldfield Estates. And then these decisions would be based on the planning board's ability to make its sole discretion to impose more stringent standards, as well as meet the criteria of approval for our current standards for 10.5.2 of approval for special permits.
James,
So kind of,
can you do me a quick favor? Can you go back 2 slides?
yes,
Table 3. So some of this in your presentation fell out of the table in table 3, and I think we talked about this in the workshop. It's still not in there.
okay,
So if you look at the table 3 that you're showing here now,
yes.
it's still missing that column.
Which column is that table, the table 4 or?
No, table 3. So you're showing table 3 structure design requirements.
Yeah,
So your presentation is correct, but the ordinance is wrong.
okay,
So you start off with zoning district,
mm-hmm,
then that column for minimum size of individual lots is missing. Then you go setback from roadway is there. Setback from other buildings is there. Well, no, that's not in the building height max. They're split up, but
okay.
the tables are missing the land space requirements.
The minimum area for shared open space? Or the dimensional requirement? Oh, under side setbacks?
Right, and your parcel development has changed too.
Okay. All
So,
right,
yeah, this is an old, I
I
think,
think,
so this is old, what you're showing us.
okay,
Because you have, if you can see, like in this one, for example, you have RA, B, C, D. The open space is 40, 40, 20.
okay, so we changed that, that's right, we did change it to 40, 20, 20.
Table 2 is now a multiplier. Table 3 and table 4 make up table 3, but one thing we needed to add, which isn't in the ordinance, is the minimum size of individual lots.
Okay, so I guess, yeah, this slide, I guess, is incorrect in that aspect of it too, so.
Well,
Let me
I
pull,
think so you can disregard that slide, right?
yeah, let me pull up that language quickly, for you guys.
But you need to decide where that minimum lot size of individual lots goes.
Sure. So let me pull up that. That is an error on my behalf.
Go to the table page right there.
Yep. So
These-
yeah, this is the correct one. This is the one that went to council.
Right.
So this is the correct table. So I reorganized them around, and then I think we looked for higher frontages for single families, duplexes. So this
But
will be the
but that's parcel development, right?
correct.
So in order to build a senior housing facility in residential AB, you need 7 acres, and if you're going to be single families, you need 150 at the street. That's what you're saying, right?
Correct.
But we need so then if you go structure design requirements, we don't have a lot requirement unless you go to the next page.
No, I don't believe there's a lot size requirement. I think what we do, Pat, is that the expectation is that we utilize total developable lot area based on what our current permitted uses are.
Yeah. All right, that's it. I just want to make sure we had that. All right. You're
Sure,
right.
yeah. So,
And we got rid of, so that everything else you showed on that slide, except for the left side, is not applicable.
that's correct. So, yeah,
This is what we want to focus on, because this is correct.
correct. I should have pulled that slide out from the last. I did take the last presentation and include it as part of this. So let me continue that one quickly. Let me just pull that back up wherever I had it. All right, there we are. So I'll skip that. We'll ignore that. Go back to that. All right, shared screen. Perfect. So anyways, yeah, we can go into a deeper discussion of the ordinance itself. Because like I said, I kind of pulled parts of it in, but not the entire thing. So kind of the highlights in terms of unit makeup is looking at a design, a more of a universal design, closer to kind of what the AARP is looking for in terms of design for aging in place. So that's talking about accessibility features on the ground floor level, 0-step entry. So at least 50% have to be designed with that 0-step from an accessible area. Walkways have to be accessible. Parking has to be accessible. So just kind of looking at accessibility standards for these houses from a design standpoint, so we can get kind of creative in terms of some cool designs. Well, we're not designing them, but someone can come in with some cool designs for 55+ communities. Similar to kind of, here's some examples of some other ones in Massachusetts. Is one East Street Commons in Hadley, Mass. This is approximately a 10-acre site, but I think the beneficial location for something like this is that you have amenities on site, as well as the location being adjacent to a walking trail. And another one that I had some experience with in a prior job was Millwood Preserve. It was a former golf course, but some of the architectural designs in terms of the 0-step and the architectural design of these projects were very impressive. And there were a lot of people that were genuinely interested in living in a community of this nature, as well as living in these townhouses who were Framingham residents looking just to downgrade or living in a community that's more accessible to themselves. As well as a shout out, I did attend a couple workshops today, but if anyone's interested in some of these design workshops, there's another one tomorrow online. The AARP has livable communities workshops, and the theme this year is designing for people of all ages. So I would, if anyone has free time tomorrow, check out some of the free virtual workshops, aarp.com, livable 2024. But happy to answer any questions, comments, or concerns. We can kind of dive deep into the full document, which is available online, and happy to be part of any discussions and communicate them.
Mr. Chase, does your committee want to go first with questions, or do you want the planning board go first? What do you prefer?
Well, I'm sure we'll have certain questions, but it's probably more productive if the planning board were to commence the discussion.
Okay, so I'll open it up to planning board members. Does anybody have any? I know we saw this in terms of a workshop, so we know about most of this. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. O'Brien? Concerns, questions, comments? All right, if nobody else start off then. So I did speak to Mr. O'Brien earlier today. I read through it later today again, just to refamiliarize myself with it. There is a duplicate paragraph right above table 1 that should be struck. It's identical language, 2 lines, right above table 1, open space preservation area. Just Scrivener's error type thing. I did talk to him later on in the document. It starts to reference tables that don't match up, and it gives letters AH, which I would assume would be adult housing, but AH doesn't mean anything. So I don't know how many times it says AH, but for example, in item 5, under the tables, it says when structures are placed on individual lots, the following shall apply. And it goes into the size of the individual lots shall allow the residential unit to meet the requirements as set forth in table H project design, table 4 AH project design. And AH gets repeated in the document it seems like around that page. So, in table 4 is, structured design requirements, so I don't know if that needs to be looked at. And then the AH should probably be removed in senior, village housing development, maybe be identified in the document, and then we can use that as an abbreviation, but AH doesn't mean anything. The other thing that I had mentioned to Mr. O'Brien was that 8.7.12 talks about waivers, and we just set a bunch of standards. For size of tract, we want there to be 40 to 30% open space. We're already given density bonuses of up to 25% in different zones for housing. So the way that 8.7.12 is written makes me a little bit nervous. I think if we're going to grant waivers, they need to be limited to specific things. I understand we might want buildings to be able to be closer together for a better design. We might want, building to be positioned differently on a lot. I think we should allow that flexibility, but I don't think we should allow waivers for zoning type things that should go to the ZBA, such as minimum lot size, such as minimum open space requirements, such as density, which we're already given a bonus for. So I think that we either need to strike 8.7.12 or amend it so that dimensional things, open space, and we're already given density bonuses, so that density can't be waived. The other thing that I noted, it refers to a table of dimensional requirements below 8.7.12, and that talks about footnote 18, and then it says reserved to, and then it says land, space, and use requirements for senior housing village development are governed by section 8.7 Senior Housing Village Development, SHV. The minimum lot size, single family, is applicable to the unit count equation for projects. So I don't know if that belongs there or not. I don't know if we need that footnote. I really don't even know what that means, because we use a formula earlier in the document that talks about the unit count is, but the unit per square footage required in the dimensional table. So for example, in the residential AB, it's 1 unit per 43,500 square feet. In residential C, it's if you do more than one, it's 18,500, but if you do more than one, it's 15,000. So I imagine what that means is the single family applicable count. So I just want to clear that up, Shane. Is that what you're trying to get at, like in C?
That's correct, because
Yeah,
we're not basing it on the 2-family. It's solely
No.
the single family developable area. So that's what that means.
Okay. But that contradicts, I think, right? Because if you look at the table, right? And if you look at the math, it says that minimum lot area per dwelling unit refers to table of dimensional requirements for residential A, B, C, and D. So what that would do, though, is like when we talked about that, what that would do is like in D, it would be 10,000 square feet if you could use per unit. But in
Let me just pull it up quick. That's correct. Well, yeah. Well, it's based on. I think what we did, Pat, was it was not based on minimum lot area per dwelling unit, but minimum lot size. Because minimum lot area per dwelling unit for RD is 10,000, where
Right.
I believe we're basing our numbers on the 18,500. It's similar to RC, which is 18,500.
right, then that should say under the formula, it should say minimum lot area per dwelling unit. That's a different number.
Correct.
So those, whichever one it should be. I thought we were going with per dwelling unit. So it'd give higher density in like a D or a C. But then that footnote 18 contradicts that.
You're right, okay. Per dwelling, minimum,
So I don't know if that's just,
yeah, I'm trying to figure out where that, yeah. I'm trying to remember if we based it on lot area or lot size, because, yeah, it does make
well,
a difference in
think-
residential C.
I think after our workshop, you changed it. I think you had talked to some landowners and stuff like that. And you had mentioned to us that you changed it, but I don't
Yeah.
think, I
That
think,
means the footnote would need to be changed. The footnote is based on minimum lot area per dwelling unit. So that refers to, so that footnote should refer to not minimum lot size, but minimum lot area per dwelling unit.
right, because the only district that minimum lot area per dwelling unit and minimum lot size are the same is AB.
Right,
In C, excuse me, it goes from 18.5 to 15,000. No, it goes from 18.5 to 18.5, I think, right?
right.
Right, it goes 18.5 to 18.5, so that's the same. But in D, it goes from 18.5 to 10,000.
Correct. So the footnote would need to be corrected, but the equation is the same.
Okay. All right. Those are my comments.
Let's see. I have one response regarding the waivers. I'm comfortable with, well, I guess we'll have a discussion, but I always kind of keep waivers in place just in case. But if it's comfortable for you, Mr. Chair, I think open space and density can't be waived. I'm also open to including amendment that would require beyond a majority of the board, but perhaps 4/5 of the board
No, I mean,
to
I'm
request a waiver, or,
just as one member, I'm fine with that. I mean, we were already given a density bonus and we're asking for open space. So why would we ever allow those things to be waived, right?
sure,
If other components of the project need to be waived, that's fine. But I think that if we allow for waivers, we should exclude density waivers and we should exclude reduction in open space. That's all.
sure.
Mr. Haley, were you trying to speak? Raise your hand or were you? No. Good. Any other planning board comments, questions? No, that's fine.
I agree with Mr. Driscoll regarding the waivers of the open space and density. If we could drop those, I think that'd be a good compromise.
So, Mr. Chase, it is a public hearing, so I can turn it over to you folks, or we could open it up to the public, whichever you prefer.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I will ask if there are other members of the Community and Economic Development Committee that would have comments or questions at this time. I know Councilor Perry and Councilor Robinson are in attendance.
Yeah, I'm just, whatever the planning board's recommending, I'm sorry for the voice again, I've got a little bit more compared to last night. But yeah, whatever you guys are looking at as far as edits on the tail end of the document there on procedure for waivers or table of dimensional requirements, it's fine by me. Just let me know what language you guys are looking to change to. But other than that, you guys know better than myself, but I am understanding what you guys are talking about, so I'm good with what you guys are talking about.
Very good, I thank you. Ms. Robinson, are there any comments or questions from you at this moment?
I just wanted to make sure I fully understood. Thank you, by the way, for the presentation, Mr. O'Brien, and thanks, Councilor Chase for the forum here. Just as a follow-up, I wanted to understand in terms of what was being discussed. Are there limits on stories? I mean, obviously, especially because of the nature of the type of building we're doing, I did hear that we need to have, 50% the ability to act for accessibility, that there would be no steps. So I imagine that that limits numbers of stories, et cetera, correct?
That is correct. Oh, no, good. That is correct. So it does limit all building heights to 2.5 stories, 35 feet, which is a typical height requirement within Bridgewater. But the requirements are that the expectation is that the planning board will be provided architectural plans, and the expectation is that some of the individuals, or most of the individuals, have a master bedroom on the first floor that they would live in. But the assumption too is that 55 plus doesn't mean that they're necessarily immobile. So
Right.
there's potential for utilization of an upstairs or a bonus room upstairs. But yeah, we do require a maximum of heights of 2.5 stories of similar structures that we have in town.
Okay, great. And then also because some of this, the technical aspects around what's in the ordinance is beyond my professional experience. Understanding that we're talking about residential zones, areas zoned for residential. As we think about the potential lot sizes in terms of what kind of buffer, I'm just using layman's terms here, in terms of any kind of buffer zone or distance from other residential developments and other homes. Can you give me a better sense of what that looks and feels like?
So these buildings would meet with typical setbacks, rear setbacks, so they couldn't be, 5 feet away from everyone else's house. So they have pretty much similar standards to a typical subdivision, with the ability or the requirement of a high percentage of open space and preservation area. So, within the RAB and C district, 40% of this development, and this has to be open space or preservation area. So you're talking, 40% of this development being open space and green space, and preferably a lot of these designs are going to have that open space in the rear of the properties and have some trees and buffer areas to be away from other properties. So you typically don't see a lot of 7-acre and 10-acre lots in the RC or RD area, but there's a lot of strong standards here, a lot of strong design buffers, and especially with this planning board. If you've been before this planning board, I'm sure there's some applicants that have been here. They are not stringent on buffer zones, so there is some strong street trees and other landscaping buffers that are included as part of this ordinance. So
Okay. Thank you. And then in terms of look and the design standards, can certainly understand from an accessibility perspective. I know there's specifications around porches and decks and parking and things like that. In terms of the actual aesthetics of the structures, is that something that we have any influence in, or is that a different approach to consider? Yeah, you get where I'm going.
Yeah, well, I'm not an architect, so a lot of the time someone will come in with their own design. The way that we kind of, and I'll share it up quickly with the design standards, so you can look at. So the language that I included as part of the unit makeup was making sure that there's a mixture of architectural styles, so not all the same house. So looking at different styles of duplex, triplexes, Cape Cod colonial, etc. A variety of colors and material on the exterior part of structures. One color shouldn't dominate the whole development, and different types of roofs. So there's, in the design standard, it kind of promotes creativity amongst the units. You're not going to get, we don't want to see the same amount of duplexes or same amount of triplexes everywhere. We want to see different types of housing, and an architect come in and kind of really create something that's creative to attract people to that community. So there are design standards as part of it, and the expectation is that someone gets creative with it. With us kind of creating rules in place to make sure that we get something that we want to see.
Great. Great, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem.
I'm good with questions.
Thank you very much, Counselor. If I could just for a moment, I would like to express my my feeling with respect to the waivers, which Chairman Driscoll had discussed a little earlier. I am in agreement that there should be limitation on the ability of the planning board to consider waivers, particularly as to the areas noted, which were as the density. Certainly, I think that's an important consideration that should not necessarily be subject to a waiver. So too, as to open space, I'm certainly in agreement with that. And as the chair had pointed out, any areas that are properly within the domain of the zoning board of appeals, I think those all make perfect sense. And to that end, I would agree that it would be advisable that waivers not be a routine matter. Now, obviously, as the special permit granting authority, the planning board has a great deal of latitude with respect to plans submitted. But I do think that we should attempt to live within the confines of what will be the final ordinance as adopted, and to not routinely be in the habit of considering or being able to allow waivers, particularly as to those particular points, density, open space, etc. That's my only comment in that regard. I generally am very favorable with respect to the proposed ordinance in its entirety, particularly I think as to matters such as lot size and setbacks and frontage requirements, total square footage. In my view, those all seem to be very soundly thought out matters, and I appreciate the work that's gone into compiling those considerations. So that really, I think, at this point is the extent of my comment. You, Mr. Chair, you may want to consider public comment.
Yes, if you guys are all set, I'll certainly do that. Are you all set, Mr. Chase?
Yes, we are indeed. Thank you.
So this is a public hearing and allows for public comment. At this point, we will open it up for public comment. Just Shane will handle that portion of it, managing that. If you just state your name and your address before asking a question, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Can you advise them to use the raise the hand feature?
Yeah, you can raise your hand or your virtual hand, or just let us know somehow that you'd like to speak, please. Or you could send Shane a message in the chat and he can find you.
All right, we have a Melissa Remendetta with her hand raised.
Hi, good evening. Melissa Raymondetta, Lakeside Drive in Bridgewater. I am going to make a few comments. The first comment I wanted to make was that with regard to the SVHD being permitted in residential AB and other residential districts, the sentence "not allowed in any other district" under the table of use regulations does not go far enough to ensure that SVHD developments are not permitted in other districts, such as the planned development district, which does permit single family housing according to the present residential AB lot and yard requirements as of right. Has this zoning language been reviewed by legal counsel to ensure that it cannot be challenged by developers in such districts like the PDD where residential AB is permitted, or is it the intent of the town to allow for SVHD in the PDD?
So, Mr. O'Brien, I think what, if you read our zoning, I don't have it in front of me, it says that in the PD, single families are allowed and you have to meet the AB zoning.
Right.
But I think you just set it up in this table of use regulations, we clearly state that in the PD, this is a no.
Right. So I would base it on that we only allow it in the RABCD district, based on the table of use regulations. So, we make it clear that it's a special permit through the planning board and not allowed in any other districts. And as
And,
the board is,
and honestly, if they did try to do it up there, this is a pretty low density. This is a pretty low density use, and they'd have to keep 40% of the lot open space, which is more than they have to do now. I think we're pretty clear that it's not allowed there. We have it as a no. And I don't think they do it anyway because they want much higher density. I think up in that zone, the different owners up there that than this would allow for.
I had a few other comments, but I did want to say that, you know, I mean, has the language been reviewed by legal counsel to, you know, to prevent a challenge like this from coming through? I mean, we just saw a special permit be approved that was 35 years old for a hotel. So as a resident, I am concerned about this grandfathering that's being permitted. And yeah, so but okay, with regard to the calculation for developable area, and I've brought this up previously, but there is a wetland bylaw, and that wetland bylaw says no touch within 25 feet of a wetland, which means nobody touches it. There's no building. So why is this calculation permitting that 25 feet of non-developable land in a calculation to determine developable land? It seems to be increasing density, and it also violates the bylaw just by its existence. So that was my other comment.
Right. If I could just answer that though, just so if you look at our zoning, you are allowed to have 50% of your lot wetlands. So if you, for example, if you're an AB, right, you only need half of the lot to be uplands. The rest of it can be wetlands. So you can have wetlands in your lot. You can have only half of it uplands, and you're still subject to that 25 no touch. They're still going to be subject to a 25 no touch, but now what they have to do to calculate the density is they can only use upland, right? So if in some regards it's stricter than our current zoning. If you look in residential D, you only need 10,000 square feet of uplands for an 18,500 square foot lot. If you look in AB, you only need 50% of the uplands. So in all cases, we allow wetlands to be part of the lot calculation, and I think this is actually stricter. I think this is, you can count to 25 feet. You can count that anyway. If you did a single family development, they could just be in the back of the lot.
Chairman Driscoll, but for that developable land, so within that calculation, is it just uplands that you're permitting to be?
You can only use uplands in the calculation.
Does it say that? Because
yeah, it says the land, but excluding streams, ponds, wetlands, 100-year floodplains, drainage easements, and areas subject to existing valid conservation and open space restrictions. So right now, if you bring a subdivision before us, you can count the wetlands as lot area. This you can't.
okay, well, it's for your consideration. I still think that 25 feet there's a bylaw there to protect that 25 feet, so it should never be part of a calculation that would impact density. And just another comment, with regard to the setbacks, the side setbacks seem a bit narrow and encourage density. And along those lines, I'm here to support Councilor McGrath's zoning ordinance DFY 25003, proposed amendment to Central Business District density bonuses 9.67. And I believe that increase in density results in an increase in building height, and any increase in building height will change the character and town-like feel of the center of Bridgewater. The CED should provide the town council, planning board, and Bridgewater's residents with a density map per acre of the central business district and its immediate surroundings.
Melissa, we haven't opened that hearing yet.
Oh,
This is
sorry.
regarding,
Okay.
That'll be the next hearing, so,
Okay, sorry.
no problem. Do you have anything else, Mrs. Ramandatta, on this hearing?
No, that's it. Thank you. Thanks for hearing my concerns. Thank you.
I think if you look, I think if you actually do density calculations out on a piece of land with wetlands, and you can use that you can count the wetlands up to 50% on your lot in a conventional subdivision, and you do it this way, I don't think you get any density bonuses. That's for sure. Because right now you can take a 1 acre lot, have half of it be wet, and stay 25 feet away from it, build on it, and get in that wetland area can be counted as your lot. Other towns like Easton, for example, says you have to have 40,000 square feet and it has to be all uplands. If that were the case and we were letting you count wetlands, then it would be different, but we allow wetlands to be counted in the calculation now.
and I guess the intent too is to preserve that open space and conservation areas similar to our open space conservation development, and to protect that open space and conservation lands. So that's the intent. There's no intent to kind of cram things in. It's to kind of utilize parcels that are 7 acre plus, for 55 plus housing, as well as kind of protecting the area as well.
And I think if we get rid of some of the waivers that are allowed, as Mr. Chase and myself mentioned, I think that'll guarantee that there won't be any additional density.
All right, we have a Janet's iPad with their hand raised.
Hi, Janet Hanson, Pleasant Street. I don't have much to say. I just wanted to follow back on what Melissa was talking about in the beginning of the concern about the planned development district. And I too agree that the language needs to be very clear that this can't be in the PD planned development district. And I know it says, well, it's not likely that they won't want to, but I think there was a little while back that they did want to, but it was turned down by the town council. But so never say never. You don't think somebody's going to do something, but if there is a little bit of a leeway there, and the language isn't absolutely clear, it could possibly be an issue. So I do hope that the language is clear, that this will never be considered be able to be in a PDD. So that's what I would want to, and I know it says, you know, I just want to make sure that it is clear in the language, that there's not going to be any loophole, because don't say that you don't think that they'd want to do it. It doesn't mean that, you know, I've seen things being done that you think that they wouldn't want to do, but they do. So I just want to make it clear. Okay.
Sure. And
All right.
Yep, thank you. I also just want to make it clear with this, the inclusion of this in our use tables, is that the intent is to have it be a special permit through the planning board and RACD. And as noted in this table of use regulations, that the N is for no, which would mean it would be not allowed in any other district that's not a residential A, B, C, or D. So just
But
wanted to.
but does PDD have residential A, B, C, and D in them? Are allowed? Are those residential things allowed in PDD?
Well, this use
This-
would not be allowed in a planned development district.
Just that one? Okay. I just making it clear, because,
No, I know
you know.
we hear you.
Okay. And protection of the wetland, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Let me look through the chat. I don't see any other virtual hands raised, nor do I see anyone else in the chat. So I'll leave it back up to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so, Mrs. Ramadada, so if you go to, just if you get a chance later, under section 4.0 of our current zoning, under 4.4.13, it says, any land to satisfy the minimum area requirements for a buildable lot must consist of either 50% non-wetlands upland as defined by the Wetlands Protection Act, or 10,000 square feet of upland, which is ever greater. So you can already count quite a bit of wetlands to your lot calculation now. But if you want to take a look at that, I know you asked the question, it's 4.111, number 3.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's no other comment, Mr. Chase, you want me to turn it back to you? Do you have any other?
I'll just poll our members once again, and if there are other members of the Community Economic Development Committee with comments or questions, if you would raise them now.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Yep. Unless, like I say, the planning board has any edits on those last couple things at the end that they want to introduce, or in specific language or crossing them out. I just want to hear what their take is on those last couple things.
All right, so I'll try to re-hit my edits. So on the what did I do? So above this table, I pulled out by mistake. So above table 1, there's a duplicate paragraph that needs to be removed. It says applicant shall utilize, that's the paragraph is just repeated twice. My other comments, at some point in the document, this AH shows up. So AH needs to be changed to whatever we're calling this ordinance.
It'll be SHVD, so we'll change AHs to SHVDs.
Right, and that table 4 is not project design, it's something else. It's
Parcel development, it's structure design requirements.
right. But I don't even know if that's the right table you want to reference, is it?
Regarding,
I mean, is that the table you want to reference? Is that the right one? Is that the right table?
for which paragraph?
So 5A,
5A.
you say table 4 AH design, AH project design. So AH needs to be changed, but project design is not what that table is. That table.
No, it should be,
That table is structured design requirements.
right, so it's not, yep, you're right.
So that needs to be changed. And then 8.7.12, I totally agree with, Mr. Chase. I think that zoning needs to be zoning, and, it should be, it's a law, not a recommendation. So I think that, waivers, I understand you might want to be able to shift buildings and things like that, but I think a lot of the dimensional requirements, especially density and open space, should not be able to be waived. I think that needs to be noted. I also think footnote 18 needs to be written.
8, yeah,
Footnote 18 needs to be written to comply with the calculation of
minimum lot area per dwelling unit rather than minimum lot size.
Correct. The bottom table of use regulations, I understand that you're noting something there, but we might want to remove that because you actually included a table.
Okay, yeah, that was more just for informational purposes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I think that's all I had written down.
okay, I'm happy
Yep.
to.
But those would be my desired edits. If the board, does the any other members of the planning board have any additional edits, or do you want to talk about any of those that I added, or strike any of those, or? No? Okay. Mr. Chase, how do you want us to do it? Do you want us to just continue with a recommendation with those edits, or do you want to talk about your edits? Then we can add some of your edits, or how do you want to handle it? Why don't you talk about your potential edits?
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based on the comments from our committee, I don't believe that we have any edits to propose beyond those that you've already enumerated, but to the extent that I'm wrong in that regard, I'll ask that the councilors please weigh in and inform me of any edits that they would propose.
No, I don't have any edits, but I am curious. So if I understand this correctly, there was a previous workshop and you all reviewed these changes prior? Was that correct?
Yeah, so we actually developed the zoning ordinance through a couple of meetings through the planning board. We probably had 2 or 3 meetings to kind of craft this up. So we had workshops, and this not necessarily an official referral like this is, but we've kind of discussed language and accepted public input, as well as reached out to different members of staff for their comments on it. So we kind of talked about this pretty much throughout the summer in terms of some ideas to get it to a place where we feel more comfortable presenting it to council.
Okay, I was just trying to understand if this was typical in the process to be reiterating edits that were already discussed prior.
I would say it's similar to anything that, you know, you look at something enough and it looks fine, and then you kind of look at it again, and then you're okay with some of the corrections. So I'm not against in terms of a couple of touch ups. I would say that we're looking at pretty much 2% of the document to be kind of touched up, but I'm okay with the rest of it.
Okay. No other additions from me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilor.
You know, I think Councilor Robinson brings up a good point, though. So maybe I think the workshop was good for us because we kind of saw a need for this and introduced it, to the council. But I think, maybe if we brought the council in or invited them to a workshop, we used to do that once in a while when Mr. Wood was there. So maybe going forward, we should invite the CED committee to a workshop. If they want to attend, they can attend. If they don't, they don't have to. So
Hey,
It's
maybe we can start tonight.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
And just for, excuse me, just for clarification for me, Pat, are we getting rid of that waivers 8, 7, 12, or are we just changing the language of that? What is the specific edit that you're looking on that one?
And I don't want to speak for Mr. Chase, but I think Mr. Chase and I were kind of on the same page in that we want waivers to be for kind of minor things and not for like land space requirements, open space requirements, density, things of that nature. So if we can edit that to achieve that, I think it's fine to leave it. If we feel it's just easier to remove it, then we remove it. I'm open to either. I talked to Mr. O'Brien about it earlier. I pointed out that I had a concern about that. And he brought up some good points that, building a location might work better if they were able to tweak things. But I think we all agree that, it's designed to be an open space development, so we want the open space to be met, and we're already giving a 25% density bonus, so we don't want people asking more density, so
Yeah,
I think that it needs to be really strengthened and that those things are captured that we can't give waivers on.
you want to add the language there that you don't want to give waivers to, so, Miss, Shane, do you have specific language that you would
We
add
could,
or
we
remove from that?
could one, remove the procedure for waivers if we want to go full, not require waivers, or we could look at the planning board may waive requirements excluding waivers of open space and density or whatever else we would like to include as part of it, of these ordinances in a majority vote. So that would exclude, density and waivers of open space.
I would be in agreement with that. I think that's appropriate since we don't want to see those types of changes as well. So if we add some language to that, I would say keep the procedure for waivers in place, but just put those exclusions in writing in that particular paragraph.
Yeah, well, I guess we could say excluding, waivers from table 1 and table 2 of this document.
No, because tables 1 and tables 2.
Tables 1 is the zoning district and open space and preservation area, and then table 2 is the multiplier allowance. So that would,
Why don't we just make it clear and just say what Dr. Perry said? You know, waivers cannot be given, waivers cannot be granted. I guess you're right, from table 1 open space preservation requirements and table 2 and table 2 density.
so yeah, we could do just the tables.
I just still put in parentheses what we're addressing in those tables, like you say.
Absolutely. I don't want to do it. I don't want to refer to it as just density, because then like someone will nitpick what density is and someone will nitpick the other one. So if we make reference to something within this ordinance, whether it be table 1, open space and preservation area and multiplier allowance, I think that's more comforting in terms of,
Be clear.
But Shane, you're okay with waiving parcel development standards?
no,
I mean, parcel development standards are basically lot area. It's like front.
no, table 1 and 2, Pat, not table 3 or 4.
No, but I'm saying we probably want to waive table 3.
Yeah, well, I would say
No,
exclude.
we probably don't want to allow waivers from table 3. Table 3 is
I guess in that sense, I would say that the goal is more stringency in terms of open space and the density.
what I'm saying is we just set standards for you need a minimum of 7 acres, 15 acres, 10 acres. So now somebody comes in with, hey, I have 100 feet of frontage and I have 4 acres. We would consider those waivers. I mean, those are land space
Well,
requirements.
I would hope whoever the planning board at that time would have a little bit of sense in them to not do that.
Why not just remove the possibility entirely?
Well, the intent of the waivers is not extreme measures. It's to have the planning board recognize that these waivers are separate than what is compliant. So at that point, I'm fine with specifying certain aspects of it, but it would have to be a sense of the planning board and the staff at that time to recommend that we go against the whole concept of the RABCD acreage size. So the expectation is someone comes in with the minimum lot size acreage to start an application process. I wouldn't consider it something that should be considered as part of a waiver process. I would say the waiver process is more looking at the sense of, you know, if someone's coming in with here's an example, aging in place design, doorways shall be a minimum of 36 inches wide. Someone wants to do 34 inches. Then they want to look to do a waiver from that. Or someone has to, another example, outside facilities shall be designed with universal access, but if stairs are required, then they look for a waiver for that. The expectation is that waivers aren't for a project entirely, it's for elements of design standards and elements of the physical scape of the project.
So I think you just put it really well there. So how do we capture that? So dimensional requirements?
Well, if the focus is keeping open space and density, I would say the table 1 and table 2. And then take any other waiver request, you know, when someone produces it, and say, no, we don't want to do that when it comes to that point.
I would agree with Mr. Driscoll. That was very well explained. But my only concern with the standards waivers is I don't want to see another situation like we've seen with a bunch of the mixed use projects where we have a requirement and people are coming in asking for a waiver for half of that amount.
Well, we don't
You
have
know.
any regarding, I don't have any mixed use things in front of me.
No, I'm just sorry. I'm just talking about previous projects that we've seen come before us, and they're asking for waivers for like half of the standards requirements. Is there any way to put in language like, you know, things shall not be waived below a certain threshold, say 75% or so?
Well, you could make it more stringent for a super majority of the board. So you could have 4/5 of the board require approval of waivers rather than 3. If that provides more confidence in the board, I guess. Because even then with a special permit, you need a 4 out of 5 board members to vote in favor of it. And then you also need a 4 out of 5 to accept waivers too.
You know, I guess, you know, maybe we just do 1 and 2, but when we adopt zoning, the town expects a certain result, right? And they should be able to, it should be predictable. And I think that when we just allow waivers to be granted, it's not predictable anymore. And it's not what, you know, hey, somebody might vote for this tonight, or a council might vote for it in a couple of weeks, and listen to testimony given at the public hearing because they say, hey, this is going to look great. It's going to be on 7 acres of land. And, you know, there's going to be 40% open space. And then a developer comes in, you know, 3 years from now, we have a different planner and a couple of us are gone. And they say, hey, I want to do this on 2 acres, and I want to have, you know, smaller frontage sizes, and that's the threshold for a waiver is much less than a variance. I understand what you're saying, Shane. I think we want to be a little bit flexible with design, but the meat of the thing, we want to make sure that the meat of it, the major components to the development aren't waived. That's all.
No, I understand that. I would just say that this language isn't dissimilar to any other zoning ordinances that we currently have. And I wouldn't say that it's any dissimilar to a process where someone would come in with a subdivision.
We don't have any other zoning ordinance where you can waive frontage or lot size.
Well, you can waive parts of an ordinance as part of.
Right. I mean, if this was broken up to design standards and to lot area and to different things, then you could say waiver from design standards, but it's all in one. I mean, I don't know how we worded it. I think you understand what we're trying to get at. So.
No, I understand. It's just from my position, it's.
Well, I don't think you're going to come to a resolution tonight on the language. So let us have a chance to craft some language and socialize that with the planning board members and members of the CED before something is presented to the council, rather than eat up a lot of time now going back and forth.
I would agree with Mr. Rowley on that. I think that's a sound idea.
So, I mean, we can, I mean, I think the plan though is we still want to give some sort of a vote tonight on this, correct though?
I think you can do that subject to the acceptable revisions that have been discussed.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I would say I would be happy with implementing Mr. O'Brien's suggestion of a supermajority required for the waivers. So I think that would at least help allay our concerns.
Yeah, and reference table 1 and table 2.
No, I think those should be straight up excluded. But
Right.
Other waivers should require a supermajority.
Right. That's what I meant. You know, open space and dense. Okay. All right. Any other discussion on this?
I think that just from a CEDC perspective and council perspective, I think that's fair as well, exclude tables 1 and 2. And if you do a fourth fifth vote on the waivers, I think it just creates a little bit more stringency at, most of the planning board would have to go along with that particular waiver going forward. So I would be happy with that as well.
All right, we'll just look for Mr. O'Brien to circulate some language regarding that then, right?
Yes.
All right, and then Shane, you got the other things that I mentioned that are more like Scrivener's errors, right? We don't need to hash those out again.
No, I haven't noted, and we're also going to present I'll have you look at it. We'll present a recommendation to council based on this, that will consider those corrections to be, probably, looked at on the floor, while they're discussing it. So I'm happy to kind of clean that up and, get that to you, to Mr. Chair, to, review.
All right, so just process-wise, Shane, we have to vote yes or no. So we have, so
Well,
if
you
we,
close the public hearing first.
right, but if we, just so I understand, so we can continue to discuss it. If the planning board's job tonight is to vote yes or no, if we want edits, we have to vote no, and then in our deliberation, discuss those edits, correct?
No, it's a non-binding recommendation to council. So we're providing a recommendation to council on this ordinance. So you can recommend something, you can recommend and not recommend something, but you can recommend something with corrections, or you cannot recommend something and
All right.
state why.
I know we go back and forth with this with Jason all the time, so, all right. So do we have a motion on the planning board side, if there's no other comments, to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Mr. McDonald, second by who?
Mr. Haley?
Mr. Haley, great. I'll take the roll. Mr. Haley,
Yes.
Mr. Geller,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald.
Yes.
Is Ms. Rojas with us or not?
I'm here.
Ms. Rojas?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm a yes. Sorry, I didn't see you.
No.
All right, so do you guys want to close your public hearing first, or do you want us to deliberate and vote, and then you'll do your whole thing? Or how do you want to handle it, Mr. Chase?
It seems to me that we'd be in a position to deliberate and vote on the same matter right now.
Is daily in-house using family
Do
recipe
you want to close your public hearing?
on kitchen cooking with.
We will, yes, I would make a recommendation that we close the public hearing. If we could have a vote on that, councilors,
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
I'll second.
motion and a second, thank you. And the vote in, we can vote on, I'm in favor of closing the public hearing.
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous, thank you.
Okay, so back to the planning board. We discussed the motion. We discussed the number of edits that need to be made. Most of them Scrivener's errors, removing a paragraph, and then tightening up 8.7.12 procedure for waivers, which would exclude table 1 and table 2, both open space and density from any waivers. And footnote 18 will be amended, and the table of use regulations on the bottom will be removed, along with the other small things like AH that we discussed. Is there a motion to recommend with edits?
Sorry, can I just ask one more question to Mr. O'Brien before we do that?
Sure thing.
Sure.
Mr. O'Brien, I don't know how relevant this is. I just want to cover all bases. So say a project is developed under these standards, right?
Yes.
And then 20 years down the line, how long are the homes built under this standard held to that standard, if that makes sense?
Well, any project that would have to, anything grandfathered into a zoning ordinance built at the time of an approval meets those requirements. But if anything changes with a zoning ordinance, or someone is requesting a change to a set of plans, they would have to come in in the case of this, would be a special permit modification. So they would have to come back before the board for a special permit modification, which would encompass, through Mass General Law, notification to abutters again, as well as planning board meeting, public hearing.
So Shane, 8.7.10, it talks about the age restriction being in the deed and the restrictive covenant and filed in the Plymouth County Registry of Deeds as well.
Yep.
And along those lines, and believe me, I don't think this is a realistic scenario. I think these will have a very viable market. Say one of these projects is built and, you know, for some reason or another, there's no 55 plus market out there. Is there any mechanism for the developer to go back and make these just generalized out, make it a generalized subdivision?
No, because they would be age restriction, age restricted. The only thing that you could really do with one, you would have to eliminate the idea of it being a 55 plus altogether based on our ordinance. So someone would have to come in and essentially we would have to like disintegrate the ordinance. But the only leeway that you can do with a lot of these ordinances, which we've kind of placed into some language within this ordinance, is that you're allowed to do less. It doesn't necessarily all have to be 55 plus. It could be 80% of the property could be 55 plus with, you know, another 20% being just general housing. But the expectation in this ordinance is that 100% of the houses or townhouses or units be 55 plus. So I guess if there's market changes, we come back before the board and we look at this to see if it's not working. But the benefit of, I guess, the benefit and the risk of, I guess, doing development is understanding that you want to do there is a market or there isn't a market, but there's still options for, you know, a regular subdivision if that's more applicable to a developer to do.
I see. Thank you very much.
Okay, so do we have a motion to recommend a motion to recommend to the council with the edits discussed this evening? And what we can do is I can work with Shane on the letter to the council and we can circulate it to the board to make sure we capture everything before it's submitted to the council. So do we have a motion to recommend with edits?
So moved.
Was that Mr. Haley?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Geller?
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion from the planning board?
I'd just like to thank Mr. O'Brien and the planning department for their work on this. I think this will be a boon to the town. I think it's a good idea, and hopefully developers take us up on it.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'll start with you, Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
Ms. Rojas,
Yes.
Mr. Haley,
Yes.
the Geller,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. All right, so on the planning board side, again, we're still in the joint public hearing. Under item 2, the next joint public hearing we have with the CED committee is in regards to DFY 25-003, proposed amendment to the Central Business District CBDS, density bonuses 9.6.7. So I will open that public hearing and
Mr. Chair, does
Sure.
does the CED committee vote for a recommendation back to council as well?
oh, I'm sorry. I thought you guys did that. I'm very sorry. I'm losing my mind. I'm sorry.
No, we just closed the public hearing. That was it.
All right. Well,
Mr. Chase?
if I would entertain a motion for approval of the proposed ordinance amendment with edits to be recommended to the council for adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. And I will poll the members, Councilor Perry
Aye.
and Councilor Robinson.
Aye.
Thank you. And I'm an aye as well. It's unanimous.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chase. I didn't mean to cut you and your committee off.
That's fine.
And I'd like to echo the sentiment that I'm excited to see this coming together as well. So thank you to all involved in this.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien, for your work on that.
All right, so I'll go back. I'll open up the next public hearing we have. This is another joint hearing with the Community Economic Development zoning ordinance DFY 25003. Proposed amendment to the Central Business District CBDS density bonuses 9.6.7. So I'll open that public hearing. Mr. Chase.
Thank you very much. And I will open the public hearing on behalf of the Community and Economic Development Committee. I note the time is 7:51 p.m. and our members remain in attendance.
Mr. O'Brien, are you going to be presenting this one, or is Mr. McGrath here, or?
This is not an ordinance that the CED department is proposing or supporting. So I think it's up to Councilmember McGrath to make her case.
Yeah, I'll just share the screen. I don't have any comment or presentation on this matter.
Chairman Driscoll and the rest of the attendees, I have to, I've got to catch a very early morning flight. Only in the short hours I need to leave the home here, so I'm going to bow out. I just need to have that on record.
Sure thing. Thanks, Ted. All right. We have,
So Ms. Pagone is still with us, though, so we have 5, correct?
that's correct.
So Ms. Pagone, you'll be participating and voting on this. Okay?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Good night, all. Thank you.
I don't think there's a vote tonight. I think it's first reading, correct?
Nope, this is the recommendation.
Oh, wait,
to-
that's right. Yeah, it is a public
Recommendation.
hearing. Sorry.
Yep.
Never
All right, we have Mary with her hand raised, so I believe that's Mary McGrath.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much for having me tonight. The reason I want to lower the density rate is the available of water and wastewater capacity. The density should fall out of the responsible design and constraints, example of the water or the wastewater capacity. And there are areas that we are building from that we need to know what wells the water are coming from and how much we're drawing for. We can't let developers use what little capacity the town has. As Helen Gordon on her presentation said, we're running on a deficit. So I know developers can get a zoning permit, but not a building permit if the water and waste capacity is not there. And I believe that developers should be able to pay for amount that they want. If they're looking for 20% from the water or our sewer, then they should continue 20% to the upkeep of the treatment. If we're going to get a new treatment plant, or if we're going to do more capacity. But watching the different ones that they try to do, like with the yellow house, I mean, 26 is way too much. So that's why I would like to be lowered from 26 to 22.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could, this almost sounds like a spot zoning issue. In Ms. McGrath's proposed zoning ordinance, she does not talk about contributions to infrastructure. I would say that, I mean, I'm a little bit confused because the density bonus is specifically set forth to create 3 things: to preserve historic preservation, to encourage renewable energy, and to encourage affordable housing. So last night at the council meeting, we heard a great deal of discussion about energy efficiency and renewable energy. Whether people here agree or not, we do have a crisis with respect to housing. So, I mean, I think it's completely inappropriate to go forward with a ordinance that is specifically referring to a specific piece of property where a proposal has been discussed, but has not even been submitted to the town for consideration or approval. Nothing has become before the planning board yet. So it's just
this doesn't mention a specific piece of property. It talks about the whole CBDS. So I don't think it'd be spot zoning. It talks about the whole CBDS, correct?
Well, I mean, the reference was made to the yellow house, which is 96 Main Street. And
right, but this says in the CBDS.
yeah, but again, my position is that there was no discussion with respect to the proposed ordinance addressing any deficiencies we have with respect to infrastructure or developer contributions. I mean, anyone that's listened to me, infrastructure capacity is one of my main concerns. So I just think the whole thing is inappropriate, but that's my opinion and you can all move forward accordingly. But I didn't see anything in this proposed ordinance that talked about developer contributions towards infrastructure.
Mr. O'Brien, would you mind putting the proposed ordinance back on the screen, please?
And I just wanted to do, just so I'm clear, all this seeks to do is to reduce the bonuses from basically 8 to 6. Is that correct? So you want to go from 8 to 4, I should say, right?
I know the bonus density is 26 and it's brought down to 22. I'm just bringing up examples of why I would want to do it. And it's since Mr. Rulli brought up the bonus density, I also have a question why they went from 6 at the prior zoning down to 3. You know, we used to have public streetscape improvement, payment to the Affordable Housing Trust, transfer to development rights, donation to open space. I think we still have a little bit of that. So there used to be 6 and now there's 3 of the things that the developers, but listening to the MBTA compliance, under section 3A of the zoning act, it says under the water and wastewater infrastructure, it does say that the developers should contribute to the capacity of it. And that's the MBA, the one that I gave Shane.
It's not within the MBTA community overlay district.
But Mrs. McGrath, I think the one thing that is important to note in this, whether we're at 22 or whether at 26, and I've said this to, I've sat in a couple of meetings prior to Mr. Rulli being here and one after him coming here. If there's not capacity on a site, if a site can't handle it, to me, density bonuses are just that. They're a bonus because there's extra capacity. So if somebody has extra parking, if somebody has extra green space, if somebody has extra this or that, and they need a project to work and they say, hey, I'll throw solar on for an extra unit, we have that discretion. So the downtown density is 18 units per acre. And then if you read the language, it says, if the board finds that a bonus provides a significant benefit to the town of Bridgewater public at large. I mean, if we have a sewer crisis or a water crisis, maybe we shouldn't be granting density bonuses because it's probably not a significant benefit. If they don't have adequate parking, we probably shouldn't be considering bonuses because it's not a significant benefit. It could cause a problem. I think that significant benefit in there allows us to make those decisions that if it only should be 22 units per acre or 18 units per acre, it's already built in. But if they have extra capacity, they could go up to 26. But we don't have to grant density bonuses.
Also, Mr. Driscoll, can you tell me why the bonus density went from 6 down to 3? Was that was a zoning law that passed, or that was just changed?
So I think Mr. Rulli's team took over the downtown zoning and they hired an outside firm to look at the CBD zoning. We broke it up into 2 groups, CBDS and CBDR. And they came back to us with a bunch of zoning amendments. There are several public hearings on it, and that's how it flushed out. I mean, I don't know why some of those came out. I don't know if they didn't apply. I don't remember what they were. So I'm not sure. I think before it required a developers agreement, and that kind of get messy before when you start talking about mitigation and stuff like that. So I think that's maybe why they came out, but I'm not sure.
Mrs. McGrath, may I ask how you arrived at the figure of 22?
It was an example that I watched a webinar that Joseph Pizzelli, the Director of Engineering for Hancock Association, he did a webinar for the Massachusetts Housing, and MBTA had it on their website. And he said, example, like if a developer is going to use 22% of your water, then the developer should contribute 22% what it costs for you the upkeep for expanding your water. So all the information I got off of this was under section 3A of the Zoning Act in the webinar.
Oh, no, I apologize. Sorry, I was not clear enough. I mean, for the allowed density bonus of 22 units, how did you come to that figure in particular?
Well, watching you guys, because I watched, and I'm only using this, I know the yellow house is outside, but I I've just was watching that one. It was the newest one that was going on. And he had the dumpster up front. And you told him that he couldn't even get in to the parking, a fire truck couldn't get into parking because of the way the cars were parked. So you guys brought up a lot of good things, and you brought it down saying, I think the most you could put on this lot was 23. And that was tight still. So
Well,
I brought it down to,
I think it was, and again, we're not talking about specific sites, but
right,
I think engineering needs to happen, number one, right? Because we've seen a lot of conceptual plans that once you put drainage in, once you try to meet open space, once you try to meet parking, they don't work. And I go back to the base density is 18 units per acre. If there's extra capacity on a site and they do certain things like affordable housing, or they do things like solar, then we can grant density bonuses. I think if a project came in the central business district and there wasn't adequate parking, there wasn't adequate open space, there wasn't adequate commercial, and I mean, I know as one person, I would say, I'm not granting density bonuses because you can't even meet the requirements of the 18. Why are we going to give you 19 and 20, right? So the other thing too is, and I don't know how you came to the 18. Frankly, I don't know how we came to the 26, but the CBDS is a very small area other than really Main Street. It encompasses the common area where some of those lots, I mean, I looked at one of the lots down there, it was 3,200 square feet a couple of weeks ago, right? So in order for anybody to do anything with those buildings, that, you know, and believe me, I want lower density more than anybody, but I think in the CBDS, that's the one spot we probably should have the latitude to go up a little bit.
I think I just.
Are you aware of that, Mrs. McGrath, that this is just the CBDS? This is just a very small area of the whole CBD?
I started that because that was the area that we were talking about to be compliance, right? Between that area and the center, because if I didn't realize we were already MBTA compliance with the waterfront village. I thought we were. But
the MBTA zoning down in CBDR and the CB and residential D.
Right, but we were talking about moving the train up and having, you know, the center, like where we're going to do.
This property, the CBDS does not, whether the train platform is moved or not, the district for the CBDS does not change.
Yeah. Well, I just looked at the different areas and saw that they were.
I mean, I'll add that when we were proposing the CBDR, we suggested 6-story buildings on certain parcels over 140,000 square feet, with the notion we would get developer contributions towards infrastructure or affordable housing. And there was a public outcry that 6 stories was too high. I mean, I'm perfectly aware of the benefit of contributions from developers, but you know, to suggest, I mean, again, this just speaks to me that this is in reaction to one particular proposal that hasn't even been submitted yet.
No, it wasn't a reaction. I was looking into the density, and then I watched the webinar, and then when I saw the planning, I saw how even though his area was small, he was trying to do the 26.
But you're talking about a specific project.
No, I saw that and used that for an example, how Mr. Driscoll told them that, you know, even though they could get up to a 26, and he showed the different requirements that he couldn't do it. So I just used that as looking at.
Well, just to be clear though, just because we allow 18 units per acre doesn't mean somebody can get 18, right? So if somebody came in with an acre downtown and they couldn't, and they couldn't meet parking, open space, commercial, they might only get 16 units. 18 units per acre is the max, and the site has to be able to accommodate all the other requirements. So just because somebody has half an acre doesn't mean they get 9. Just because somebody has an acre doesn't mean they get 18. Just because somebody has an acre doesn't mean they're automatically going to get 8 bonuses. There are many sites in the central business district that can't even come close to accommodating that. And I think there's probably very few lots in the CBD that CBDS that are 1 acre or more.
I understand. I just thought that, you know, to give someone a chance to do 26, we're not gonna be here forever, all of us, and I would kind of brought it down to 22, because I mean, MBTA only requires 15 units an acre. We already give them 18, so that's 3 above. And just seeing how, you know, you could fit what 26 into different lots, I just thought, you know, every developer's gonna push. I mean, I understand why, but to control it. I mean, you guys are good. I've watched you and you keep track. But, you know, just protecting the future of the town and overbuilding. That's all.
Any other, why Mrs. McGrath is here? Are there planning board questions for Mrs. McGrath? I know Mr. McDonald has spoken. I've spoken. Anybody else would like to speak? Mr. Chase, your group?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there comments from the Community Economic Development Committee?
I
Go
I
ahead,
don't have,
Susie.
yeah, go ahead.
No, it's fine. Go ahead, Susie. I'll follow up.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I don't have any specific questions, but, you know, having been involved heavily with the MBTA ordinance and other things, I'm happy, you know, to chat offline as well. That's all.
As far as me, I like to put our faith in the planning board and the review process that they undergo. And again, they're well versed in reviewing every aspect and understanding being that the CBDS, you know, it was set at 26 probably for a particular reason. As Mr. Rulli suggested, there's a variety of reasons that this was originally set up this way, based on you know, housing crisis that the state has certainly continued to speak of, working toward more efficient energy and renewable energy. So I tend to stand at, you know, pat where it's at. I'd rather see it just stay and let the planning board make the decision on the number of units going forward. If there is a good project and they've got the space and they could, you know, with bonuses do the 26 in that particular district, I don't see the problem. But again, I don't think we're gonna develop or you know, sell a particular area if it's not gonna fit. And I believe the planning board will see through on that. So I tend to stand pat on what is existing there at this point in time.
And Mr. Chase, if I could, please.
Yes, please, Mr.
These
Rowley.
density bonuses were not created as part of the MBTA communities legislation or the rezoning. These existed long before I got to Bridgewater. So just, I want to make sure that we're clear about that. The CED did not create these density bonuses. They already existed.
That's true.
Yeah, good point of distinction, Bob. Thank you.
I think that I always hate to foreclose on any possibility that we really don't even have before us. You know, it's when I think about the bonuses, the density bonuses or any other type of incentive, it's within the purview of the planning board ultimately. And I think that Chairman Driscoll did make the case well that there could be other factors, including things like open space, for example, that would otherwise minimize or maybe entirely preclude the opportunity of a developer to max out on the size of any particular site. And certainly this is true with respect to infrastructure as well. Now, when we speak about infrastructure, one of the main concerns, of course, has been appropriate water supply. And this is an ongoing matter of discussion in the town right now. This is something that's under consideration on a number of different levels, in terms of wells, in terms of purchasing water, perhaps from other towns, other municipalities. So it's not an absolutely ironclad status right now. I mean, it's certainly very much in flux, and we're not looking at any particular project that's come before us right now. We're simply looking ahead to what might come our way down the road. And I don't know that in terms of that, I don't know that the difference between 22 and 26, for example, is significant enough to make a difference one way or the other. But again, we don't know what is likely to come before us, and we don't know what kinds of proposals that developers would be willing to extend to us that could cause us to consider incentives like bonuses. So I'd rather not close the door on something that we don't even have a good understanding of yet. Are there any other comments from the CEDC?
I agree with you, Fred. Again, it's, with maybe one potential, project happening in this district coming up, that's in front of the planning board, they'll certainly make the call on the density for that project. But again, if there's a future development, and obviously we're working on our water situation right now, and a few years down the line, our capacity might be better. So we, if everything's in place and the planning board feels that a project is worthy of those units, and we have the capacity and all that, I don't see why we should, limit ourselves or limit the ability of a developer to come on in and with a good project that would be a benefit to the town. I think if you limit the units right now, you just potentially might limit your development or what your developers might be able to do by seeing that limit right off the bat. So again, as Pat stated, the bonus is providing, if the bonus provides a significant benefit to the town of Bridgewater or the public at large, I think the planning board should have that jurisdiction. So like I say, I tend to stand pat where this ordinance already stands.
Mrs. McGrath, just, I appreciate the effort on this, but I think that, there might be some, and believe me, I fight with Shane and Bob all the time about density. I mean, I'll tell you that, but I think that if you do a project in the CBDS, you need to do a site plan. If you want a density bonus, now you have to do a site plan and a special permit. If there's not a significant benefit to the town and the site can't handle it, we shouldn't grant those density bonuses. And it says, even if you do those things 1, 2, or 3, it has to provide a significant benefit to the town. And it says the planning board may allow for density bonuses of additional residential units not to exceed 26. So if a project comes in on Central Square or Main Street or wherever it may come in, and they can't meet the requirements, and and there's a water crisis or a sewer crisis, and the sewer department saying don't allow extra units, I don't see how we could ever justify that there's a significant public benefit. So I think that we should. I'm confident that language and the additional need for an additional special permit really puts some things into balance there.
I appreciate it, Mr. Disro. And like you said, I mean, you're the gatekeeper right now because you said you're the one that fights to keep the density. So I hope you stay on the board during all this development so you keep our town. And if I could request one more thing is, could I find out what laws or how we changed from the 6 to the 3, especially, the payment to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund?
Well, I think 2 things, and I started to think about it. One of them was for preservation of open space, and it talked about acreage. It talked about for every, I don't have it in front of me, but I remember it was like for every acre of land you preserved, you get an extra unit. I mean, nobody's going to preserve an acre for a unit. Another one was a contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust, which
Right.
I was put on 5 years ago, and since Lisa Sullivan, who ran it for us, left, Michael Dutton never had the board reconvene for another meeting. I don't know if the town manager's office and he disbanded it, but so there's no housing trust. No one was going to preserve an acre of land downtown. So I think probably as Mr. Rulli and the consultants and Mr. O'Brien went through them, they said these don't even apply anymore. So the one and the other thing too is I think the 6th one was a developers agreement for infrastructure improvements. And that was a negotiated agreement with the town manager for like sidewalks improvements and things of that nature. And I think that it looks like Mr. Rulli and this team combined it with item 2. It says public improvements for affordable housing. So it appears that we still have that option.
So since the Affordable Housing Trust is still up and running and there is some money in it, maybe we could add that one back.
There's no money in it.
Oh, I thought when Laurie sent me a thing showed it was money in there. But I'll double check with her.
I just know that we had to sign a thing with the Registry of Deeds years ago, and I have to disclose it for work every year, and it's not functioning. It was supposed to get funded, and it never got funded. I mean, if it's funded, I'm not aware of that. I don't think it's funded though.
I mean, I will tell you from experience, having had affordable housing trust funds, developers aren't against that because in many cases, they'd rather make a contribution to the trust fund and have a market rate unit in their building. I don't have that's not a hard stop for me to have that put in. But as Mr. Driscoll said, there is no affordable housing trust fund, as we know, in the town right now. But I mean, that's a fine alternative. I've used that very successfully in other communities but the Affordable Housing Trust Fund has to do something.
Okay, I'll check because I know right now the rules and procedures have something about, the changing of the stuff. But when I spoke to Laurie, I'm pretty sure that the Affordable Housing Trust is still there. But the rules and procedures have something about changing names. And I wrote to the town clerk asking her to forward, not to change it so we could keep using it. But I'll check into that with Mrs. Bly.
So would you be willing to withdraw this at this point?
Well, yeah, because I'm not getting support, so you're gonna vote against it, so I'll withdraw.
Anyone vote against it? I'm suggesting that if you withdrew it.
Well, why don't we, Mr. McGrath, obviously you can withdraw it. If you want us to take a vote on it, we're happy to take a vote. But before we do that though, it is a public hearing, so can we open it up to this?
So, I'm sorry, Mr. Driscoll. Can I just get 2 questions in there before we do that?
Sure.
Mr. Perry, one of Mr. Perry's previous comments brought up a question to mind. Mr. Rulli or Mr. O'Brien, do you know why the bonus cap was initially set at 26? Do you have any insight on that? How they came to that number?
That was done before I came to Bridgewater.
Yeah, I would say that it was either when the mixed use and the CBD came about in 2016 or 2019, but that was the original numbers of 18 units per acre and 26 units for the density bonus. So you'd have to ask someone that was around back then.
It might be a little tricky, but I get you. I just doing some quick napkin math, and it's not my strongest subject, believe me, so I might have this wrong. But I believe a reduction to 24 might be more effective at achieving your objectives, Mrs. McGrath. From just the quick math I did, that would cap structures in most configurations at either 3 or 4 stories, depending on how many units they put in. And I think you might get a better reception, but that's just a personal opinion. I'm not speaking for the board on this case.
But that's another thing, Mr. McDonald. In CBDS, we don't allow anything more than 3.5 stories. So again, that's another.
So the math just kind of works out better.
That's another restriction on density. I mean, so some of these projects are gonna come in under that because of we have a 20% open space requirement. We have 3.5 stories. Where in the CBDS, you have 10% open space, you have 4 stories. So it's by its nature and the design criteria we have, I've talked to Mr. O'Brien about this, and we both said the same thing. I would find it hard for any project to get up to 26 units per acre in residential CBDS and in CBDS, not residential. I'm sorry.
I understand.
So, Mr. Driscoll, to answer, I don't want to withdraw. I'll let the public speak and then you guys can vote.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Chase, are you all set? If I open up to the public, is your board good?
Yes, I believe so. Yes, I believe we are set for public comment.
So it is a public hearing. So I will open up for public comment.
All right, we have Melissa Remendetta with her hand raised.
Hi, good evening again. I continue to support Councilor McGrath's zoning ordinance DFY 25003. Sorry for the barking dog in the background. I think that Councilor McGrath has brought light to an important issue facing the town. And I do hope it encourages further discussion on the topic. I think residents are receiving a lot of different messages from the town with regard to our ability to continue to see development within the current infrastructure. And it's very hard, I think, as a resident to visualize density. And it's a concerning topic, and wondering if maybe CED or planning board or town council could maybe look at the issue of density a little bit closer, just like the issue of traffic was looked at. There was a great public meeting about traffic that was held at BSU. Perhaps a similar type of thing could be done for density, to try to explain and to try to reassure residents that that what we've got in our zoning is actually right for what we as a town, as a city, can sustain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramadan.
Thank you. We have a Janet Hanson with her hand raised.
Hi, Janet Hanson, Pleasant Street. Thank you. I too am concerned. I've always been concerned about bonus densities, and I think 26 is too much. So I agree with Councilor McGrath to reduce it. I personally would rather just have it go no more than 18, but 22 would be a compromise. But to Mr. Driscoll, you kind of pointed out that they only can go 3 or 3.5 stories, so it's not likely that they'll ever be able to do 26. So why bother having it in the language if it's not going to be a possibility? But as I say all the time, if you've got it in there, it's a potential. And you have to really think. You can say, well, they're probably not likely going to be able to do it. But you can't rely on that not likely be able to do it. If it's in there, there's going to be somebody that's going to want to try to, squeeze that stone. So to avoid any confusion, the bonus densities are confusing, but I am concerned. And you're saying it's not likely, and you look at downtown, you say, well, they're not going to be able to be able to do 18 units. But what's stopping my concern, because demolition is in the language of the CBDS, what is stopping somebody from buying up a whole section and wanting to demolish it and then be able to do that density? We've got to compromise. We've got to preserve what the center of town is and do what everybody wants to do. But I don't want the center of town to be a city. And, we may have a city form of government. I don't want it to be a city. So we have to protect that. And so I just don't understand why it has to be 26. It's too much. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I don't see anyone else with their hands raised, nor do I see anyone else in the chat.
Okay. Any more discussion or questions for Mrs. McGrath from the planning board? If not, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Sorry, I was unmuting, Pat. Mrs. Hanson did bring up something I was kind of already thinking of. You had mentioned previously, most of the parcels in this zoning area are small, less than an acre, I believe. But there is certainly a possibility for somebody to buy up adjoining parcels, combine them, and then you could have the potential for a much larger project on your hands, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not a completely meritless concern.
Well, that I would say that people buying certain parcels of land to do a larger development project is more common than people may think.
I agree completely. That's why I believe, it is worth thinking about. We might like to say to ourselves for now, like, oh, that 26 would be hard to reach. And I would agree in the current circumstances, it could be, but an enterprising developer could easily flip that right on its head. So I would just keep that in mind.
Nick specific, I mean, they still have to come before you for both site plan approval and special permit.
As well as demolition of those
Yeah.
structures.
I agree, but we're talking about restricting our ability to allow things, which I think is a valuable tool in municipalities, toolkit.
Well, just to be clear, a building could have more than 26 units in it. We're not saying the building can't, right? We're saying that it's 26 units per acre.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I understand that.
And the CBDS doesn't have any limitations on building size, which does in CBDR. So you could have a building, but it's per acre we're talking about, not per building.
Right. That was all.
Anything else from the planning board? All right. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Pagon, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Geller? Any discussion? Ms. Pagon?
Yes.
Ms. Rojas?
Yes.
Mr. Geller?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
I'm a yes. So Mr. Chase, do you guys want to have more discussion and then potentially close your hearing?
Thank you. I'll defer to the other members of CEDC. Are there any comments or questions remaining at this point?
None from me, Mr. Chase.
Nothing further from me either. I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
I'll second.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's a motion for
Closing the hearing.
closing the meeting. All right, very good. And I'll conduct the poll and Counselor Perry,
Yes, close the hearing.
thank you. Counselor Robinson,
Yes.
thank you. And I'm a yes as well. And our meeting is closed. Public meeting.
Okay. So back to do you want to deliberate first or do you want us to deliberate first, Mr. Chase? Doesn't matter to me.
I'd be happy to take the lead if that's agreeable with you. I appreciate that.
Go ahead.
So I would entertain a motion with respect to zoning ordinance FY 25-003.
Motion to deny.
Then I'll second that motion.
Okay, and thank you. And if we could conduct a vote, please, I'll poll Councilor Perry.
No on the ordinance as proposed.
Thank you. And Councilor Robinson.
No.
Thank you. I am also a no, and that is unanimous.
Okay, so do we have on the planning board side any discussion on this?
I would just say to Ms. McGrath, I mean, the public's not deaf, dumb, and blind. Everyone knows which way the wind is blowing. The town clearly is trying to expand the downtown. I think any attempt to reduce that expansion is going to face, unfortunately, stiff opposition. I salute your effort to try, but I hope you keep trying to do so, but I don't think you're going to have much luck, unfortunately.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald.
I'd just say that I prefer less density. I like more green space. I like smaller buildings. I like more of the village feel. But I don't know what this does. I don't know the basis for going from 26 to 22. I don't know, I don't know if it really makes that much of a difference. I mean, the standard density is 18 units per acre. If there's an exceptional site that has extra capacity, the planning board has the ability through the public permit, the special permit process to increase that. It doesn't say we have to, it says we may. So without some sort of a formula or an example as to how you came up, if it's just a number that's picked out of the sky, I just don't know. I just really don't understand the difference between 26 and 22. on most of the lots downtown, it's a fractional unit. So I think without more information, and, more basis for that recommendation to drop it from 26 to 22, I'm going to be against it. I would say though that if we're trying to achieve a certain look of smaller buildings in CBDS, maybe we should look at developing tighter design standards, because the examples that everybody was giving was that somebody could buy a bunch of assemblage and then put a massive building on it with more than 26 units in it. Well, we could do the same thing we did in CBDS and limit the building size to have smaller village scale buildings in the front or along the street and have larger buildings in the back, which we don't have that currently in the CBDS. So I think that would be a better zoning ordinance change, to try to create a certain look, as opposed to a certain density. Somebody might come to us with all 1 bedrooms, and they might be a lot less impactful than a bunch of 3 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms. So you may want to give them a couple extra units. So that's why I'll probably vote against it. And I applaud you for your efforts, though, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Driscoll. It was actually the 22 came from watching you when you condensed the lot, to 23, and you showed the math and why. And I thought, well, I'll just do 22. But I appreciate.
But if I recall, though, the math was based off of, and I'm trying to think of what you're saying. The math was based off of, that's not a full acre. I know we're not supposed to talk about one site, but the site that you're referencing of in that preliminary meeting, that wasn't quite an acre. So if you did the math and you reduced the 26 down by the amount of square footage in the proportion to the acre, that was where I came up with the 22 or the 23 in the math, because it wasn't a full acre of land.
Then that's my mistake. I thought it was because he was proposing 26, so I just assumed it must be, because it wasn't. That's why.
I don't have it in front of me, and that was so long ago. But I think I was doing the math on the fly, which can be dangerous as well. So.
Oh, I understand that. I appreciate you having and listening to me, and I appreciate your points of views. I'll consider them.
Any other discussion before we have a motion?
I would just say, sorry.
I have a few words, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, Ms. Pagano, go ahead.
All right, first and foremost, Counselor, I appreciate your offer of this legislation. Much like my colleagues, I myself will not be supporting it because of several reasons, and I will try to make them as clear as possible. The town of Bridgewater is in desperate need of economic development, but we recognize the fact that we are limited in how we can develop the municipality. Yes, we are a city government. Yes, we are still considered a town. The attempts to change the character or shape of downtown has been an issue for decades. I'm definitely going to say certainly, there is no way a developer is going to want to do anything more than 3 or 4 floors. I don't see how that's going to be an issue with anything higher than that. We can barely get any developers to come into downtown as it is. The legislation is proposed almost single-handedly defers, deflects, and denies any potential development downtown that would allow our downtown development and vision to reality concept from flourishing. I appreciate that you want to make limitations on certain things, but right now, with even the limitations that we have in place, it would probably be better use of time and consideration in legislation to think of design review guidelines and limitations in that regard. Right now, as it stands, downtown does not have that much development. What development is there is anywhere between 1 floor to 2 floors, and even those are in short supply. We still have a large lot where the Friendlies used to be that is vacant. We have a large housing lot adjacent to that, which has also remained vacant for a considerable amount of time. It is not an issue of what kind of units are going to go in there. It's a matter of attracting actual developers. And while I appreciate the motion that you put before this, there are developers out there that are most likely watching these types of meetings and seeing that all we want to do is keep a small town feel. I appreciate that. I've lived in this town for 40 years. I remember when there were still farms. Heck, Jay Leach's farm on South Street was one of the larger farms here in town. It's been gobbled up by a few houses. That is the way things are happening. The other thing is we are in the direct center of the South Shore. We are not necessarily the center of the universe, but we also do have crossroads. We have an opportunity to curry favor of developers that will see what our town looks like and what we want to have. Our vision of reality concept does that. We have design review ideas and concepts that would be so much better applied and used than to create these types of limitations that are just basically splitting hairs into what will be developed. I am concerned that there are elements in town that want to keep it a small town. You have to realize this is a population center of over 40,000 individuals with the college and the prison and commuters that come into town every day. We are well past the point where we would be able to maintain a small town feel. I appreciate that folks want to keep that small community feel. We can still do that in a different way. We can bring in business. We can bring in development. If you want to limit to 2 or 3 floors, sure, fine. But I'm going to tell you right now, the maximum anybody's going to want to build in this town is at least 3, as far as I can tell. Now, the buildings that are going to be down at the factory area that's over near the river, that's across the street from Campus Plaza. That's probably the largest development I think we're going to see in this town. I don't personally foresee something bigger than that happening. What we are trying to do now is maintain and grow what we have. So while your proposal seeks to reduce development density, I would suggest.
If I could just remind you, so the public hearing is closed. So we're in deliberations now. So we're considering the ordinance before us. We're not communicating with the public anymore. And we're voting on it. So I understand where you're coming from, but we should have said this in the public hearing. This is the deliberation on we're moving towards a motion. So just, I want to keep it towards based on the regulation, the ordinance in front of us.
Well, in that case, Mr. Chairman, I am, as I mentioned at the start of my comments, I'm a no.
Okay.
So I just have a question for Ms. Pagone. For much of this deliberation, or even the public hearing, I've been hearing that 26 is a hard to reach number. It's probably not an issue anyways. But now your statement implied that a reduction to 22 would be a destruction and denial of the Vision to Reality project. Can you explain your thought process on that?
I believe what we're trying to do with the plan itself as it is right now is beneficial. I see any limitation to what we're trying to do initially is going to cause problems. If
what is it that you're trying to do? You keep saying that.
We're trying to maintain a small town feel, but we need to bring in development. We have vacant lots. We're not even at the point of even being able to curry anybody to come in to do anything. And right now, I see any type of proposal that limits what we're trying to accomplish as a long-term plan is limiting what we want to do.
I'm pretty sure we just carried in a massive project right across from Roach Brothers.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
All right, so just I got it, Mr. O'Brien. Thank you. We're just deliberating on this ordinance before us now. So we had the public hearing. We listened to testimony from the public. We listened to each other. So we're supposed to consider that information and discuss that information and get to a motion. So is there anything else about this particular ordinance and this 26 to 22 that we'd like to discuss at this point?
No, sir, I'm all set.
Anybody else? Okay. So if there's no more discussion on just simply going from the 26 to the 22, is there a motion on this ordinance?
I'll make a motion to deny. As we've been all talking, it's really not going to make a huge difference.
All right, so we're making a non-binding recommendation. So that'd be a motion to not recommend, Mr. Geller?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I can second that.
Ms. Rojas, thank you. Any further discussion on that? Okay, so I'll take the roll, Ms. Pagone.
Voting no on the measure.
Right, but the motion, I believe, was to not recommend. So are you a yes to not recommend or a no to not recommend?
Yes to not recommend.
Mr. Geller,
Yes.
Ms. Rojas,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Abstain.
Okay, and I'm a yes. So where we voted to not recommend this ordinance.
And
But-
I'll get something together for you, Mr. Chair, to review.
All right, and again, thank you, Council McGrath, for coming tonight and introducing this.
Thank you
I
very much for having me.
I have so I'll move on to our agenda. I have a request, item 3. We had this discussion with Mr. It's 8:41 at night. We still have 4 items before us. Mr. O'Brien, under item 3, was going to give us an update on the new ADU legislation. He provided us with a presentation. Shane, does it make sense to get into that tonight at this late hour where we have stuff to do, or would that be better? We still haven't crafted it.
I can summarize it quick. So, because we prefaced one of the conversations
why-
earlier
why
about
don't you-
the 55 plus regarding having some workshops with the CED committee.
All right. So hold on, Shane. Hold on a second.
Sure.
So let me go back to the agenda. So you want to continue with our normal agenda, correct? You can do that rather quickly.
With our normal agenda, you don't want to have a brief discussion?
No. Do you have a presentation for ADUs tonight?
No, I just wanted to, because we have a joint meeting with the CED committee,
All right.
that we wanted to have a quick discussion while they're here, and then their public hearing is open.
All right. So all right. Good. So you don't have a presentation. You just give an update on the ADUs.
Right. I just figured CED committee's here. We want to kind of bring them in on this discussion.
All right. So let me go back. So item 3, we have accessory dwelling units. We're doing a joint discussion with the CED committee. This is a discussion of changes to section 1A and section 3 of MGL chapter 40 regarding accessory dwelling units and what is currently allowed within our zoning ordinance for expanded living area. So Mr. O'Brien, go ahead.
Sure thing. So I just wanted to let the counselors know while they're here that there's been some changes in legislation. I provided it through Deb to you guys that will require the town to change our current zoning ordinances for in-law apartments, or what we call expanded living areas. So we just wanted to bring you into the discussion, as well as potentially have a workshop in the near future as these regulations go into place in February of next year. So we've been working on some minor language to our current ordinance, but we just kind of wanted to rope you guys in, kind of gauge your input, as well as maybe potentially schedule some future workshop meetings prior to us having a joint committee meeting for a zoning amendment in the near future. So that's pretty much the gist of it. We don't have to go into heavy discussion, but I just kind of want to provide the information as well as.
Are you just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So just so the council's known, I think you did a good job explaining it to us, that we're one of the few towns that already allow, we call them expanded living space already, right? We call it expanded living space / in-law apartments.
Yes.
Where somebody can build right now 800 square feet onto their property, but it has to be basically a family member. So some of the changes that we have to make are they can be up to 900 square feet or 50% of the house.
Correct. We have to redefine what an accessory dwelling unit is. There's some language based on where it's located, adjacent to a train station, which is typical of Massachusetts zoning ordinances nowadays. But yeah, it essentially eliminates the restrictions from a lot of communities where you have to have it, where it eliminates the requirement for an owner occupied accessory dwelling unit. So essentially it allows for ADUs to be built on all single families, and what communities can do is provide proper setbacks, have proper square footages, and they have to be by right. So you can't require them to be a special permit as we currently do. You would have to essentially in that table of use tables allow them by right. You can have a site plan review process, but you.
Shane, as it currently as of right.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. I was looking at a different regulation that we've been getting calls about. Sorry.
So this is basically just updating our ordinance to match the new state law.
Correct.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of miseducation out there. We've gotten a lot of calls once this was approved or signed off by the governor's office, where we were getting phone calls like, "Oh, I'd like to build my ADU today," or "I'd like to turn my my shed into an apartment. Can I do it tomorrow?" And it's like, no, that's not it at all. Or as well as multifamilies, you know, adding an addition to it and calling it an extra unit. So we're just, you know, starting this process in terms of clarifying some stuff, as well as kind of getting into the nitty gritty of understanding some guidelines. I know Steve Solari is not here tonight, but he did go to a conference today with other building inspectors about just kind of the know-how of accessory dwelling units. So we've been communicating with him. We'll have to bring in the fire department into this, but we're just kind of trying to tighten it up so it doesn't get out of control with people speculating. But as of currently, you know, we allow for in-law apartments essentially by right without really any major issues. I would say that Steve probably permits probably a handful per year. So it's not something that we're expecting to see every single family house in Bridgewater to get. As well as there's limitations through Title V that also need to be considered, as well as building code and fire code. So, you know, us touching up the zoning ordinance doesn't necessarily preclude requirements from building code, Board of Health requirements, and fire code. So just kind of.
So Shane, you gave us some great cheat sheets from the state.
Yep.
Maybe you can send those out to the board members again, and maybe the three councils that are on this. And
Yep,
maybe
I've sent them through Deb. So, but anyone can check out the mass.gov ADU page. They have a good FAQ page, as well as some consideration of other regulations. But I would ask anyone to check them out. I'll put the link into the chat if anyone wants to check them out. But other than that, I'll keep it quiet.
Hey Shane,
Hey.
not that not that I'm opposed to anything, but I'm just curious. You kind of threw out, you know, maybe it would make sense to do a workshop. This sounds like a zoning compliance topic. What is it that you would like to accomplish with a workshop?
We would need to amend our current zoning ordinance to meet the new state regulations. So currently, we limit ADUs to be only 800 square feet, whereas now we would have to allow for them to be up to 900 or 50% of the 50% of a unit, as well as redefine what we call an expanded living area in our zoning ordinance definitions, and just match it with the state definition of an accessory dwelling unit.
But I think, and Susie, what you're asking is if it's just simply adopting what we need to, is there a need for a workshop? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
So maybe we don't need a workshop, Shannon. We just go right to an ordinance.
No problem. I just, you know, you guys suggested a workshop earlier, so I just.
Or why don't we work on an ordinance and we can send out a draft to the CED, right? In advance and ask.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to, I guess while they were here, I wanted to say, hey, guess what? We've been doing this. If you guys want to,
Gotcha.
you guys okay with that?
And again, I don't think I'm generally opposed to the ideas of workshops. I just wanted to make sure that we could be the most useful and supportive in it. But if it's something that is, you know, just could be drafted through the appropriate channels and we just review, that's all I was asking.
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
I suppose it would all depend if we adopt the state language word for word or if we make some town specific changes to it. I'm also in favor of it. I think ADUs are a great thing. They make it much easier to care for elderly family members. I've experienced that myself, so I think it's a boon. So hopefully we can make an excellent ordinance to assess with that.
Hopefully,
just-
hopefully your mother's not watching.
Excuse me, Shane, quick question in regards to, is there any differences in, setbacks of property lines, the state regulations versus what we currently have in town? Will there be any changes needed for, setbacks of property lines?
No, I don't believe so. I think that our setbacks are pretty clear. I think what I talked with Steve today is making sure that people understand the differences between setbacks for a primary structure and an accessory structure. Because if we're considering these to be accessory structures to the primary residence, then they would have setback requirements specific to that comparative to a primary. So we may have to spell that out better. But the pretty much the only state regulation and requirement that they're asking is that you don't impose regulations or setbacks that are impossible to achieve. So if some town said, oh, you can have ADUs, but they have to be 100 feet from the front setback, 100 feet from the side, et cetera, et cetera. So that's pretty
Right.
much it. I don't think there's anything in our current ordinance that's too impossible to achieve. I just think that we just have to be considerate of what we currently have for accessory structures, and if there's anything that needs to be specified towards accessory dwelling units that we could include.
Thank you.
No problem. Other than that, Mr. Chair, or both chairs of both boards, no action required. Just wanted to have a conversation.
Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you, Shane.
All right, we're gonna continue on, Mr. Chase. If you guys want to close your public hearing, and we're gonna stay here, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would entertain a motion to close our committee meeting.
So moved.
Second,
And motion and a second, and I'll poll the members, Counselor Perry
yes.
and Counselor Robinson.
Yes.
Thank you, and I'm a yes as well, and we stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you,
Great.
guys.
Thank
Thank
Have
you,
a good night.
guys. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, item 4, new business. Mr. McDonald, I have to sign off. I have a conflict, so let me know. Somebody send me a text and I'll sign back on for 238 Broad Street.
Sure thing. I'll let you know, Mr. Chair, once this deliberation's done.
Sounds good. Okay, so up next, we have a public hearing for a special permit modification for Lot 2A, aka 25 through 27 Leonard Street, formerly of 259 Summer Street. It is a modification of a previously approved special permit for Lot 2 pursuant to Section 10.5. Special permits, and it looks like some of the text are cut off, but
Yeah, let me have you read the legal ad, Mr. Chair.
yes, sir.
Let me pull that up quickly. There you go.
A public hearing notice for the Bridgewater Planning Board on Wednesday, October 16, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. The Bridgewater Planning Board will conduct a public hearing via Zoom on an application by 259 Summer Street Realty Trust for a special permit modification. Previous approval dated September 4th, 2024. Located at 27 to 29 Leonard Street, Lot 2A on A&R plan, formerly part of 259 Summer Street, Bridgewater, Mass. Assessors Map 48, Lot 164. The plans were prepared by Silva Engineering Associates, PC, and are on file with the town clerk and CD office and website. All interested persons, I don't know if I have to read the last bit.
Yeah, all persons will interested in attending, and then these were placed in the enterprise on the 2nd and 9th of October. Other than that, I think the applicant is here.
Ms. Baptiste, I believe, so on you.
Baptiste is here for the applicant and to represent this lovely revision. If I could share my screen.
Sure. Thanks for your patience.
Hey, that's overtime hours.
It certainly is. And it looks lovely in the background, but I am still sitting in the office. I can't share yet.
I should be able
Oh,
to.
now I can. Sorry.
Here you go.
All right. let us start with where we were last time. We were here for a special permit to allow the duplex. And the lot lines did a little a zig and a zag, and we had an access easement to a barn that is on the abutting property. And through the ZBA process requesting variance, the ZBA chose to have us revise and modify the property line so that we would eliminate the need for an easement to this historic barn. And the only variance that we needed then was front setback at the 40-foot or 35-foot. And so what you're here looking at is the same building layout, the same roof recharge, same driveway. The only thing that changed was the sideline right over here. And you have an A&R in front of you a little bit later to solidify this new property line as the property line for the lots that are 1A and 2A. That's it. If you had questions, comments, it's very, it's the same with a little zig and a zag, a little bit different.
Thank you, Ms. Baptista. Any planning board comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
this reflects all the suggestions that were from the previous meeting, when we discussed this matter before, correct?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay. No more comments, Mr. Chairman.
I don't think we're gonna have to take too much time on this one. I think it's a pretty
Excuse me.
clear cut. Miss,
hello.
Oh, sorry, we gotta open up the public hearing, Carolyn, before we.
okay, I will hold my comment if you want to go ahead and do that, since there appears to be no further planning board comment.
Yeah, just from a staff comment standpoint, when you guys approved the initial special permit, that was primarily for the duplex use. You know, with any modification to a special permit, we're having another public hearing, but in terms of changes to the property, since the last time we met, the zoning board did approve a variance for the lot. It was actually for the setback from the, it was sideline lot width from the lot width from the front setback.
Oh, good. I'm glad I'm
which
not
was,
the only one fumbling with that. Yes.
yeah, it's not frontage, but
Lot
it's
width at the
something.
front setback. Yes.
So it didn't require planning board action with the frontage waiver, but it was, at the frontage, at the lot width of the front setback. So there was a change in 1 square foot since the previous lot to approval. We do have an A&R plan that will, that the planning board can consider to endorse later on today that matches this. There was a previous A&R plan that had different sets of lot lines, but being that a variance was approved with similar sight lines, and there's no changes essentially to this plan other than 1 square foot and side setbacks. I don't have any issues with the modification. We're just kind of following the proper protocol through this, so nothing major here comparative to other special permit modifications we typically see.
So this is exactly the plan that we went back and forth on, and finally we said, look, we need to vote on this, and if they get approval through ZBA, they'd have to come back before us anyways, correct?
You're exactly right.
That's it. Yep.
okay. I would concur with Mr. O'Brien. So if we want to open it up to public comment, believe we have somebody waiting to speak.
Please raise your virtual hand, or if you want to say something in the chat. I think Carolyn, you were saying something.
Yes, thank you, Caroline Reiber, Summer Street. You've mentioned that there was only 1 square foot changed, but there was also changes to the setbacks. So which is it?
Both.
Oh, okay. So what's the difference in the setbacks?
The previous setback was, I think, 30 feet 6 inches, and now it's 31.4.
And it's only, we didn't move the house, we moved the proposed division.
The lot line to the right changed.
Okay, I understand the house plan didn't move, but so you're kind of skating over that. It's more than just 1 square foot. There was a setback change and the square foot change. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. Can I ask why this came back up again? with all the variances and the back and forth, why this came up again? Is it because of the setbacks, the 1 square foot, both?
Rebecca, would you like to answer that through the chair?
Yeah, through the chair, yes. It's more in line with, we went to the zoning board to ask for relief from frontage, and zoning board preferred to give us a variance for the setback, for the width at the front setback, so that this historic barn can be maintained without the use of an easement. So if I flip back to the other one, the other plan that we had approved here, you can see there was a proposed easement, and ownership would have been by lot 2, and access for lot 1 would have been through an easement. The zoning board didn't like that idea. And so the zoning board asked for the change that we would have the 125 feet of frontage, and we would be able to get less width at the front setback right along in here if we kept this historic barn and its access on lot 1. So what we did was, instead of this nice straight line at 143 with this hard angle, we put a jog in the line and we softened the angle so that this historic barn now has side setback requirements for lot 1A.
Yeah, the 259, originally when the applicant came before the zoning board of appeals, they were asking for a variance for 259 Summer Street. Whereas when the second time they came before the zoning board of appeals, they were coming for a variance for this newly created lot.
Yes. Right. So can I ask, you're allowed to start construction without approval of this?
We've signed off on permits for the other lot because there was no appeal, as well as we had a pre-construction meeting. So the other house didn't have any issues in terms of a modification for the special permit.
Okay, but construction has started on both lots. So I guess my question, you're allowed to start development before this gets approved.
They're not allowed to get a building permit.
I was going to say, I believe the only work was staking of a limit of clearing line, and they may have actually done the limit of clearing while they were doing the limit for lot 3. So they probably
No, the foundations are dug. The foundations are dug. So
Okay.
that's why I'm a little concerned. You know, we're having this discussion when construction is well underway, that the lots have been completely cleared.
So the developer takes a chance when he digs the hole without having his building permit. Because if there was they could be taking a chance. Any time that a developer jumps the gun, they're taking the chance. And it is a chance that they took if they can't pour concrete until they get their building permit. So I don't know if Shane has any more that he can add on that.
I can add that there is a building permit for lot 3 on the A&R, and for lot 2A, I've not signed off on planning board. I can't sign off because due to
You should come take a look at what's been done on lot 2 then.
I
Because I think there may have
I
been an
understand.
issue.
Okay, I understand the difference between signing off on a building permit and not signing off on a building permit. So I can talk to the building inspector, but in terms of planning board action, it's appropriate that lot 3 has a building permit that's active, that's been signed off by this board, whereas lot 2A, even with approval or denial tonight, or say it is approved tonight, there's still an appeal period that runs after this. And I will not sign off for a building permit from a planning board perspective until that appeal period runs.
And how long is that appeal period for?
A 20-day appeal period.
Okay, it's just been very interesting listening to the conversations tonight about preserving space. And these 2 lots, and it's amazing what the town has been able to squeeze into these 2 lots. I understand setbacks, it may all be legal, that doesn't necessarily mean it's right. And we're talking about development of the town and all the obstacles there, but this was able to go through quite quickly. And this does not benefit the town. Several of many of our neighbors have opposed this for the reasons that it does not benefit the town. It certainly doesn't benefit the neighborhood. But this was able to go through incredibly quickly. Work has been done, whether things are signed or not. The official word around that's your purview. But I am just concerned, again, hearing the conversation tonight, how people want to preserve space, less density, but the town has approved to shove 4, slots into a field in between houses. It's just, I feel like there's a little bit of disconnect about what's being said and what's being actually done. And it does concern me, not just so much about the downtown, but what is happening to the town overall. It's really not about the economic growth of the town, but maybe the growth for, certain individuals. And again, nothing wrong with that, but I think the town really needs to think about how that's being done and what it means to existing neighborhoods.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Ray, just to clarify, your concern is that these 2 duplexes are too dense for the area? Am I
Oh,
understanding? you correctly?
yes. Yes, they were approved, but I mean, you're shoehorning them in there. It's ridiculous.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did see somebody else with their hand raised earlier. Mr. Ventura, I believe you're unmuted. You may
Oh,
speak.
Chris, yeah. Christine.
Chris Ventura, 32 Leonard Street, directly across from the building, and neighbor of Carol Ann. Just as Carol Ann stated, both foundations have not only been poured, but they've been set, and today all of the dirt was also leveled inside the whole foundation area. And it's just on both developments. And so it's just really distressing that, just as Carol Ann just stated, where so many of us local residents who have been here for 100 years, see things just being squeezed in and being done even before it's been signed off. So it's really distressing. There were trees on those 2 lots, 2 particular trees that I had brought up that were at least 100 years old, hoping that they could be saved. Big, beautiful trees, and they went down on the first day. I know that has nothing to do with anything, but it was on this particular lot in question. Again, I keep referring to Carol Ann, but it just seems to be moving at a rate of speed that doesn't seem appropriate.
Ms. Ventura, just for clarification, I believe Ms. Reiber said, I hope I'm saying that correctly. She said the foundations have been dug, but she didn't mention they've been poured. You're saying that the concrete has been.
The concrete has been poured, yes, sir.
Mr. O'Brien, I know you said that, you can dig on the property. Is it legal to pour the foundation before this approval?
Well, I don't sign off on foundation permits. I signed off on building permits. So I would have to clarify with the building inspector on that.
And Ms. Baptista, can you confirm that the foundations have been poured for the property in question here?
Because my understanding is no, I don't know. I haven't been by the site. Like I said, I've just been kind of.
I haven't been by, and we haven't been asked for a foundation as built. I put a quick email into developer to ask the question if they poured. It's obviously 9 o'clock at night, and I might not get an answer.
Yeah, I understand. Look, I really don't have any big issue with these projects. I just want to make sure that, we hold developers to the standards they're supposed to follow. So if you could follow up on that and look into that, Mr. O'Brien, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I can only, like I said, Mr. Chair, the standard that I hold people to is based on this board. So there's been no sign-offs for this site. There's been sign-offs for the other site. So they have a building permit in hand, whereas this site, they need this special permit modification to move forward in order to do what they're trying to do. So, we need action from this board as well as, time to pass before I can sign off on a building permit if approved tonight.
Yeah, I get you. I just want to make sure the proper procedure is being followed, and we don't want people getting
Understood.
ahead of themselves.
I'll reach out to the building inspector regarding that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there any further public comment? Okay, any planning board comment, questions, anything? Ms. Spigot, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm a little, I guess I'm a little concerned here. I kind of share the same sentiment regarding construction. I'm kind of surprised that they went ahead and I know you said they go in with the I guess some sort of expectation or hope that the planning board could say yes. In this particular instance, it sounds like they've already started doing the construction work, which I think is kind of antithetical to actually having gotten the building permit. Usually a building permit connotes you have the permission to start doing the construction. I'm not sure what happened in this particular instance, Shane. If we say no to this tonight, what particularly happens with this scenario where this contractor has already has already dug a hole for a foundation, put in the concrete for the foundation as reported by the neighboring homeowners? What happens in the instance if the board were to say no?
I would say that at that point, it's a fair question. I guess the issue is that the intent of the variance and the A&R plan is to adjust the lot lines, which really don't make a true difference. It's a couple inches, as to allow for 259 Summer Street to comply with zoning. So the lot lines, I guess, as currently recorded, would still exist, and the applicant still would be able to build at the location.
And the barn would have to
Because
be torn down.
it's a special permit with no appeal.
Right.
And then 259 Summer Street has a zoning violation on it due to the location of the barn.
And the barn would be torn down to comply with zoning.
Right, because if we don't approve it, it would end up, this was sort of similar, I think a similar question I had posed the last time that this came up, and I think I just want to make sure that that's still the same situation, but I guess my concern now is that barring that, why did construction already start? Because it sounds like, the foundation's already been poured and set. Is there anything that precludes them from is there any type of accountability for the contractor now? Is there anything, the town says, or they need to be fined for it, or, you went ahead and did something before any town body looked at the proposal and said, hey, yes, you can go ahead and go and start work, or, hey, you just did this with the assumption that they might say yes or they might say no. Probably not a good look and probably not a good idea. I think it's a concern I share with Ms. Riber and Ms. Ventura that while this proposal is just for the approval of the lines, it's kind of a concern to me that something has been brought to us that I'm going into this with the assumption that the work hasn't started yet. I think I myself unfortunately can't get down to look at every property in town, but the fact the work's already started on this before we even said yes to it or some change to it, that kind of concerns me. Ultimately, the changes that needed to be made with the lot lines are satisfactory in my eyes, but I think the bigger concern that I think the neighbors put forth to us here in the meeting tonight is that contractor went ahead with construction, and they did that before any other type of say on it, including that building permit that you referenced.
Yeah, I would say probably the only reason I didn't sign off on the building permit as well is because there was pending action with the special permit modification as well too. So, anytime there's like a pending item for it that's based around changing a special permit around, that's action that we can't really take. But in the sense of this, if for some reason this was denied, they could still get a building permit tomorrow because we technically would sign off on it.
So I guess my follow-up question, Shane, is there's no repercussion or
in terms of if someone puts the cart before the horse, it's ideally it's the difference between I guess a building inspector question and a planning question, because someone could come in and do a subdivision and put in a bunch of foundations, but then they're surprised that we don't give them a building permit because they don't meet a certain action. So
it just seems counterintuitive. I mean,
I'm not a developer, but I would say it's more common than you think, especially with the season coming up and people want to get foundations in.
I get that, but I mean, I guess maybe I'm not necessarily too familiar with how things work in the private sector. I've been a municipal employee for many, many years, but I can tell you right now, when I have to go do, tax title or something, I need to make sure I've already sent the letters out and before I actually put somebody on tax taking. It kind of feels like that in this situation where something should have happened, that they should have gotten the okay to say, hey, you can pour the concrete foundation, not assume they can pour the concrete foundation. It would be like me going and putting a property on tax title without sending a notice to someone saying, hey, you're at likely risk of tax title. I mean, it's
No,
I am
understand.
supportive of the change for the lot lines at least.
Point of order here. I mean, we're really here discussing. I get the frustration of seeing the things be built before, and that is the developer developing at risk. He is doing it completely at his own risk. If the foundation is in the wrong spot, yes, the building department go out and rip it out. But this here tonight, we're really here discussing the property line. And Shane's right. He can get a building permit to do it. And a lot of developers actually do a bunch of stuff. Because if you actually get a warm, fuzzy feeling that something is going to move ahead without a lot of issues, and you can get a jump on beating the weather, or you can get a jump on ordering stuff that's long lead items, that's just how the whole industry really does work. Is it fair? No. But it is a risk that a developer is willing to take, knowing that he has a warm, fuzzy feeling that, okay, this project's going to move forward. We already got these approvals. We're only moving a line. That's basically how the industry works.
Well said, Mr. Geller.
It
And
really
while I share your concerns, Ms. Pagone, I'm sure Mr. O'Brien has noted our comments and he will look into it. And
I'll reach out to Steve in terms of just common practice, just in terms of referring back to the special permit modification. The location of the building itself does not change, as Baptiste has stated. We're talking lot lines on this site. So what my expectation for any decision would be that all the conditions of the initial special permit still remain in place. But that the final plans of that special permit reflect the outlines of this lot 2A that will be created through the A&R later, rather than have it refer to a plan that with lot line changes. So that's kind of the specific action that I would be expecting from the board on this, whereas the same conditions would apply that we would have for every other special permit. So we would still be making appropriate inspections, still appropriate information about roof drains, still common planning board action that we would have for all duplexes and special permits.
I concur. I think we should refocus to the actual plan in front of us, and the other issues.
If I may, I did get a little bit of a clarification.
Go ahead.
Solari, the building inspector, approved the construction of the footings and the stoning of the bottom of the hole. There was to be no walls in place until all of this paperwork was set in stone. No pun intended though. So footings and stoned, that's what you have.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
All right. So refocusing back to the actual proposal in front of us. I personally see no issue with the change of the lot line. In fact, I think it's probably a good thing.
Mr. Chair, if appropriate, would you like to close the public hearing?
Is there any other public or board commentary before we do so?
Just one last comment, if I may.
Yes,
Again, I'm
ma'am.
at 273 Summer Street. We've been, the neighbors, we've been actively following all of this. We're well aware that most of our comments are moot at this point. I have been the whole time. That doesn't mean we still don't feel the right or the need to speak them, especially to this board. We understand that things are going to move forward, but at a minimum, they should be done right. And again, with all of the discussion this evening about, preserving space and what has happened right down the street, the townspeople need to start paying attention, not what people say, but what they do. So, again, we're not fools. We understand how this works here in Bridgewater. We get it. But we still just want to make sure that things are at least at a minimum done right and done safely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any board comment? All right, I thank the public for their comments. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Motion to close the hearing?
Motion by Mr. Geller. Is that a second, Ms. Pagone?
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? Ms. Pagone?
Yes.
Mr. Geller?
Yes.
Mrs. Rojas? Oh, I don't know if Astrid had to step away for a second.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now.
I said yes.
Oh, and I'm a yes.
All right.
If you want to text Pat, Mr. O'Brien. I
Oh, we
will-
gotta have, that was just to close the public
Oh,
hearing,
I'm
Mr. Chair.
sorry. Yep.
That, so if there's, so yeah, just a point, like I mentioned earlier, I think what I'm looking is that all standard conditions remain in place from the initial approval. But that that special permit reflect the current plans before us, as well as acknowledge the A&R plan that's going to be before the board, as well as the variance that was approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Mr. Brown, I just have a question for clarification. We received public concerns, and I just want to, maybe it'll help illuminate those concerns. What is the density they could have put on this property? If like what's the maximum allowed in this area?
The highest use you could do here would be a duplex, which requires a special permit. So I don't know the square footage per se for the current lot to remain meeting the requirements of the area, as well as proposing.
If I may.
No, go ahead. You
Right.
probably, yeah, sure.
Yeah. When we initially looked at this property, you could fit, when you tear down, unfortunately, if you raise the existing buildings, you could fit 4 lots with duplexes. 8 units.
So you developed half the capacity that the site could legally allow.
Correct. By leaving lot 1 as oversized, you eliminated the potential for 2 more duplexes.
Which would
Thank you very
require
much.
special permits, of course, from the
Which would
planning board,
require
so that
special
would
permits.
for
Yeah.
special permits, so.
This stuff confuses me very often, so I just wanted to kind of get that clarification out there for the concerned members of the public. Thank you very much, Ms. Baptiste. Okay, do we have a motion on the proposal itself?
Motion to approve?
By Ms. Pagone, do we have a second?
I can second.
Second by Mrs. Rojas. Any further discussion?
Yes, we're making that approval with all the necessary requirements from the old special permit plus the variance that was approved, correct?
I believe since it's a modification, all the previously implemented
Yeah,
requirements
it would be specific to this plan, and all the other requirements would be. So I'll have you sign off on the modification approval anyways, Mr. Chair. But I'll have it reviewed, and we'll have it as a attachment to the initial approval.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Geller,
Yes.
Ms. Pagone,
Yes.
Mrs. Rojas,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, I'll let Pat know.
Thank you. I'll start the next one and then you can jump in. I just want to keep things moving.
Sure thing, thanks.
We have a public meeting for a site plan review for a minor modification for 238 Broad Street. It is a modification of a previously approved site plan review for circulation and other site improvements. Is there a notice I have to read for that one as well, Mr.
Nope, this is just a minor modification. I believe that there is a representative patiently here on behalf of the owner or applicant.
If they are here, they may begin when ready.
It's
Bill.
Bill Lucas with Polar Engineering.
Hi, Bill. How's it going?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
Wonderful.
Great. I guess I just sit still until Mr. Chairman's back.
Oh, no, well, what do you think, Mr. O'Brien? Should he proceed or?
I think he wants all the votes that he can.
Sounds good then.
So yeah, Pat said give him 3 minutes. That was 2 minutes ago.
Sounds good.
So, but Bill, you're able to share your screen.
Yes, sir. I will
And
request
give
now.
give the people what they've been dying to see.
I'm assuming you can see that screen now.
Yes.
Great. And I will pause until
Michael, what are these site improvements that you're working on?
Well,
I know there's no A.
we're implementing technologies to make sure the French fries actually stay hot, so they don't turn to garbage like 5 seconds after you order them.
Oh, you can't be dissing the.
Wow, that's America's favorite fries there, dude.
They're good for about 30 seconds, and then once they cool down, it's over.
Then that's why you got to eat them in 30 seconds.
Yeah, there you go.
McDonald's site.
do I need to put that into the application? Is that...
Careful, you might get it as a condition of approval or denial.
Are they bringing back the playground outside?
You know, that the playground has gone by the wayside, honestly. In a lot of their restaurants, they usually take it out.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's a pretty big legal risk to be completely honest.
I personally miss the GameCube and the N64s that would give you the trial stuff. The one on the one in Providence. No, is it? Yeah, East Providence line. That was the one to go to. And then you haven't lived until you went to a fancy McDonald's down in Florida. The ones that have like beyond the fast food.
Are you guys just talking because you're waiting for me, or?
Oh yeah, we were just talking about McDonald's.
You could go to McDonald's in Nashville where there's actually a guy singing and a guitar at it.
See,
Oh, wow.
that's actually you wait and see. This is what Bill's going to present tonight.
Yeah. Yes.
He made those promises to me in a meeting.
the McDonald's that I saw in Italy, where it's like all marble walls. Yeah, that one.
Mr. Driscoll, I have opened the meeting.
$95 for a Big Mac.
I turn it over to you.
Did you open the public meeting?
Yes, sir. All yours.
This is a public meeting, not a public hearing, correct?
Correct. This is a determination of a minor modification for the project before us. So they had a previously approved site plan review, not a special permit. So Bill's here to present the changes.
Floor is mine.
Floor is yours.
Excellent. All right. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Welcome back. And rest of the board members. My name's Bill Lucas. I'm with Bowler Engineering. Here with you tonight representing McDonald's, and in particular, I think the first note that I'd like to make is the address as listed in the agenda says 238. I believe 238 is across the street.
Yeah.
And we are 222. At least that's everything that we've shown on the application to date. So just for clerical purposes, wanted to address that part.
Okay.
All right, so I'll jump in again, assuming everybody can see my screen. I think we've already checked that box, but overall, this is an aerial view, and what we're showing with the yellow dashed line is the Campus Plaza Shopping Center, and that red rectangle towards the upper portion of it is the McDonald's site itself on the Campus Plaza. That is a leased parcel within the Campus Plaza, and it has frontage on Broad Street, as we've just identified. There's no direct access from Broad Street to the McDonald's site itself, but there are nearby access points. And immediately north of the site, you'll see Town River, which is relatively close to the site itself. And I will cross that bridge when we get to it. All right, before you now is the existing conditions plan survey prepared fairly recently. And there is a lot of information on this plan, but to walk you through it in general, where I'm kind of circling right now is the existing McDonald's restaurant with the drive-through fronting Broad Street itself, and then the front of the building on the right-hand side, which faces the Campus Plaza parking lot. And I describe all of that because when we get to the proposed condition, you will see that there's going to be very minor changes to the building itself with respect to its location and orientation. So I just want to make sure that everyone is familiarized with the property itself and the building. Second piece of this is the circulation of the site. As you know, on the top side of the building, that is where you enter the drive-through, and then you will traverse around the rear of the building in a counterclockwise fashion around the site, where you will go to the menu board, order point, and then ultimately wrap around the bottom side of the building or closer to Broad Street, where you would pay and pick up your food. Again, describing that counterclockwise circulation because when we get to the proposed condition, that will remain largely in place. There is a trash enclosure located to the rear of the site that is currently located within the 100-foot riparian zone associated with the town river. And there is some existing pavement impervious surface that is located within that zone as well. Here's the proposed conditions. Again, zoomed in a little bit, but now you can probably more clearly see the building. No changes to it. The building itself will be renovated on the exterior to have a new facade. We'll take that McDonald's that looks like it's straight out of the 1970s and bring it into modern times a little bit, as well as a new sidewalk and landscaping along the perimeter of the building. We do a lot of that work in particular because McDonald's over time has probably over the past 8 years with a lot of their restaurants have been bringing those into compliance with all ADA regulations. They want to ensure accessibility from parking to the building itself and then interior to the building just to make sure they're completely up to code. So that's been a major thrust of a lot of these projects besides the fact that they're refreshing and rebranding across the board. We want to make sure accessibility is appropriate as well. On the top side of that building, you'll see very clearly new pavement markings for the drive-through itself, same exact location. And again, you're going to proceed towards the rear of the building and then work that counterclockwise fashion to now where there's an order point almost directly to the left of the rear of the building. And what they call is the side-by-side drive-through experience. And what that allows is for a little more queuing to occur. And then at the same time, they're trying to process those orders more efficiently. They'll reduce the time from order to service by, it depends on what the orders are, but overall, that's what they're clocking across the board at all of their restaurants. It's a more efficient experience. And that's purposeful because a lot of the business model now has changed from people going to McDonald's and sitting down and eating to instead using the drive-through more. They've had a big shift in their economic growth where there's just a higher percentage of customers that want to use the drive-through. After that double drive-through, the side-by-side, cars will work their way around, pick up their food, and leave the site just as they would in existing conditions now. So at the rear of the site, again, there was some parking over here and that trash enclosure. We've modified that layout a little bit to relocate the trash enclosure closer to this lower left-hand corner of the site, and then just modified to expand that drive aisle to allow this circulation to still occur. And what it does is it's a reduction of 9 parking spaces on the site itself. And then there is no increase to impervious coverage within the riparian 100-foot riparian zone. This gives you a quick view of the front and rear elevations of the building itself with a little coloration. You can, at the top of your screen, that is the front elevation that'll be facing towards the parking field in Campus Plaza Center. And then this is the rear elevation that is closest to Town River. Here's your two elevations on the sides. These are the long versions of the building. Just for simplicity, at the bottom of your screen, that's the side closest to Broad Street, where your two pickup windows are clearly identified. And you'll see the McDonald's sign branded on the top of the wall. And then the other, at the top of your screen, there's your non-drive-through. Again, that's where the drive-through queuing starts. And this is the face of the building that is opposite of Broad Street, with an entry point where we were proposing new sidewalk and landscaping along that frontage. And there is a sign for just the McDonald's logo to identify where entry point is to the building. And in general, that's the whole presentation. It's a pretty simple project. Again, it mainly focuses on renovation of the exterior of the building. There'll be some renovation to the interior of the building, just again, freshening up that look. There's the ADA compliance component, where there's ensuring access from the proposed stalls at the front of the store into the building itself, and then some interior improvements for accessibility purposes and regulations. And then there's lastly, the side-by-side drive-through experience on the rear of the building that they'd like to get in place. With that said, I'll open it up to the board.
Thank you. And then I read the 2 points made by Mr. Tanzi. Mr. O'Brien, those are the only things we received from engineering, correct?
That is correct. Greg didn't have any, well, is Greg still here?
Yes,
All right, I'll let Greg talk. I don't want to speak on behalf of you.
I didn't have any issues with it. Clearly, there are improvements to the site, the accessibility to the site and the circulation are an improvement. They've got adequate parking that can be made up for the parking spaces adjacent in the plaza. I think it'll help the exterior circulation of traffic between the restaurant and the bank. And as stated in the presentation, the level of impervious area really hasn't changed. And that's really a conservation issue, not really a planning issue. So I did not have any issues with this project.
And just the question to the engineer, one of your other comments, Mr. Tanzi, was that the parking spaces were reduced, but the plaza and the plaza and the McDonald's all share the same ownership, I believe. And you noted that there's sufficient parking in the Campus Plaza lot. Is that correct?
Yes,
that's correct. Oh, I'm sorry.
Anything else from the board? Any other questions?
Yeah, just a small one for me. Mr. Lucas, could you please put page 4 of your presentation back up on the screen?
Oh, let me allow him to share again.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to clog up the works here.
It's okay.
Thank you. My question is, I don't see it marked, but I might be missing it. I'm assuming deliveries to the restaurant of material come in via tractor trailer. Is that correct?
Most likely. I wish I had an owner operator here to better explain that situation, but I would assume that is the case. It's probably a tractor trailer.
Yeah, probably a fair guess. Where would their unloading area be? I don't really see anywhere particularly suitable for one on the plans.
In this case, they would prefer to probably load or stop along the rear of the site and then wheel materials to the upper end of the building, the top of your page, through those back two doors on the upper left-hand corner. Those go back to the kitchen and back to their freezer areas.
And do you feel that if a tractor trailer were to park on the side of that road, there would be sufficient clearance for traffic to move about it?
If there was, potentially, yes. If there was no one in that second drive-through area, then I'd feel completely comfortable. But, 20-foot width, clear from the edge of the drive-through, the second drive-through. If the truck wasn't completely pulled to the side, it would be a tight squeeze. Let's be honest. And I don't know their operational hours in terms of deliveries. But
yeah,
that's the other component of this. Are they making deliveries earlier in the morning when they're not experiencing much traffic, or in the middle of the day? That's another component that I'm unaware of. And I would think that it's probably going to be a similar situation to what they experience now.
Would it perhaps be worth considering adding a pull-off for trucks to the bottom left, adjacent to the dumpster area?
In lieu of parking? Is that the...
No, sir. The two shaded dumpster areas in the bottom left.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I can't use my mouse on the screen, but
No.
potentially expanding kind of like a truck runoff down there via pavement for them to pull off to the side so as to not obstruct traffic.
We could take that into consideration. Again, part of the project was not to increase impervious surface on the site. So that would definitely impact that component.
But so Mike, a couple times when I've actually driven by, I've actually seen the tractor trailer parked in the drive-through lane.
Oh, really?
Uploading, and you actually drove around. Other times I've seen it parked on the other side of that concrete barrier island. And so it probably all depends on who's doing the delivery that day.
Right, makes
Just
sense.
a couple times when I've driven by, I'm like, okay. I mean, that's always a tough little drive-through area, but
yeah.
And I'm sure they don't deliver during peak hours.
Makes sense. I just thought it might be worth mentioning. I don't know if it's actually an issue or not.
Oh, don't take that down yet. I had a question.
Oh, come on. That's on me. He's not doing anything. I'm changing it so I can see you guys' faces.
You don't need to take it. Yeah, I guess you don't need to take it. You could have left it up. So your trash enclosures, are those two sets of trash enclosures?
Yes.
And what are they made out of? Right now, the existing trash enclosure, I believe, is concrete, right? Concrete wall all the way around it.
I believe so. Well, we could probably zoom in and look at that a little more closely.
It does say concrete aprons for these ones, Steve.
Yeah, the concrete apron. So that's the apron on the ground. What are they building dumpster enclosure of? And the only other concern about that is if I'm driving down Route 18 and I look over, what am I going to see?
Mm-hmm. That was going to be my question.
Aesthetically,
Are we going to have any bushes to cover that?
Enclosure is just walls.
So it is a 6-foot high board-on-board Trex material. And it'll be colored probably very similarly to the wall of the building. So that darker gray material.
Okay. I just hope they don't hang banners on it like they do now. Especially where it's gonna be facing Route 18. I know that's not you, but operationally wise, I really hope they don't do that. Start drilling holes into the trucks.
Do we want to consider adopting some kind of screening or?
I don't know, is there a proposal for any landscaping on this site? As you're cleaning it up?
Typically, what we identify is landscaping by the owner operator. And that's what we've noted to date.
Right, because you had mentioned in your presentation that there'd be some landscaping along the drive-through side.
Correct, along the foundation of the building. Right, because these are new green spaces that'll be created here in front on the left, on the right-hand side. There'll be a couple pockets along the building on the upper end of the drawing where, you know, we are establishing new sidewalk. There'll be a new island in and around where the equipment is located. You know, there'll be new curbing in here, so they'll have to fix any landscaping that is displaced, as well as, you know, they'll probably just reestablish lawn on this left-hand side, very similar to what's out there today. And again, across the face, probably behind those trash enclosures, we do not show anything in terms of landscaping, in terms of shrubbery or trees at this time.
I think I'd almost like to add a condition to try and screen those a little bit with landscaping. You know, we did it for the project that's going in across the street during the drive aisle to try and to hide some of the backup on cars and everything. And you know, I think seeing the cars is a little bit easier to your eye than looking at, you know, dumpster enclosures that are, you know, 15 feet long, 15-foot high wall. I'd like to see. I'd really love to see some greenery put in front of that to try and hide that.
Yeah, I'd echo Mr. Giller's statements there. I mean, just from like not quite where the blue line intersects with the plot line, but you know, if you just screen that corner a bit, you know, just some shrubs or something, it would help aesthetically without breaking the bank, I think.
Other than that, I think it'll be a great improvement to the McDonald's.
Yeah, any other board questions or comments? So, Mr. As part of the minus, so right by those two dumpsters, we're looking to add some screening there, is that correct?
From my understanding, that's something that the board has recommended based on their comments.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Mr. Lucas? Do you think that would be amenable to the applicant?
I think that'll be amenable to the applicant, yes.
I guess it's just a question of the board. Is it you feel appropriate approving on a motion tonight? Or do we want to see plantings for the next meeting? I leave it up to you guys.
Could we approve it with the condition that they will do that?
Absolutely. It's just a matter of how you guys want, what type of action you guys take on that.
I mean, we're not looking at the whole site as a new site plan review. That's why I'm struggling with it. If it was a new site plan, we'd want a landscape plan and everything else, but this is just a minor modification, so.
Yeah, there is a relocation of the dumpster though, and that's something that also will be noted, I guess, when they go before conservation.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I think if we could add some screening plants around those dumpster areas, evergreens, and you know, provide a landscape plan to properly screen those dumpsters, I think that would be a good condition.
Yeah, I don't think there's a need for them to come before us again with it, as long as it's understood to be implemented.
Cool.
All right, any further discussion on this? So the first thing we need to do, Shane, is vote to accept it as a minor modification, because a major would require a public hearing, correct?
That is correct.
All right, so do we have a motion by the board to accept this site plan? It's not 238, it's what is it?
233. And I apologize for the Scrivener's error. I was looking back at past emails and they did, initially the emails did state 238 Broad Street. So in my head, it was,
So what is the correct address?
I think it's 222.
222?
Yes.
So do the McDonald's site plan be?
Well, I have it as, okay, so, all right, so
Well,
I have it as
222.
233. So this is the odd numbers are on that side of the street.
All right, the odd number's on the right side.
Yeah, so that's 233. So we're
Right.
both on the wrong side of the street, Bill.
Yeah, it's funny because when you Google it, 222 takes you right to it.
Yes.
All right, so do we have a motion to accept this as a minor modification?
So moved. I believe it qualifies.
By Mr. McDonald, do we have a second?
I can second that.
Second for discussion.
Second by Ms. Rojas. Okay, so discussion?
So that motion includes the added of the screen.
Well, so we're just accepting this as a minor modification, then we can talk about the modification. How do we do that change?
This is accepting it as a minor modification. So if we accepted it as not a minor modification, we would have to renotice this and this would be sent out for probably a meeting from now.
Right,
So
but I think what Mr. Geller is getting at, when we accept it as a minor modification, should we add the condition about the dumpster screening to that or take a separate vote?
I would say it's, if we feel more comfortable, is to on the motion, talk about the screening, and then on the other motion, talk about the screening.
Yeah, I believe procedurally the amendment would be added to the actual approval.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second to accept this as a minor modification. So I'll take the roll. Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Rojas?
Yes.
Ms. Pagan?
Yes.
And Mr. Geller?
Yes.
Thank you.
Pat, are you a yes?
I'm a yes, yeah.
Cool.
All right, so now do we have a motion to approve or deny the minor modification?
Sorry, just before we get to that, I actually have a question for Mr. Lucas. With the tandem drive-throughs, is there any kind of I don't know, like red light, green light system in place to prevent both those cars from trying to enter the food pickup queue at the same time? I can envision some fender benders there.
No, so yeah, it's funny that usually comes up, and I was at a hearing last night and the same question. It's usually one person that's taking the orders from McDonald's, so they will address one vehicle at a time. They check on window A. If that driver's not ready, they'll flip to B and work that order. And then once B's done, B moves forward and A's still waiting, right? So you'll have that situation. And that also helps to align the cars when they approach the windows for payment and pickup. So you're usually in a situation where it is one after the other, unless for some reason it's an oddity where somebody is taking more time before they move forward. And in either scenario, if there was that situation where two cars may start moving forward, remember they're moving forward from 0 miles per hour. And if they're just kind of aware, somebody's usually going to look to make sure that other lane isn't moving forward, and that's such a slow speed that there's usually never any kind of accident that occurs. That's been my experience.
Okay. And just for further clarification, are these drive-thrus are they like touch panel kind of things where the people do that, or is it the same voice ordering?
It's voice ordering on the exterior. Those are LED, basically TV screens out there that provide the whole menu, and then that menu flips to what your order is, and it shows all the items with the pricing and then a total at the bottom. So it's a very nice setup, very modernized, and even that sometimes there's a concern about the volume of the speaker. That is basically, it's a speaker that is set to only provide volume to that distance of somebody in the driver's seat of the vehicle itself. And it is actually self-automated to, raise or decrease the volume based on the ambient noise in the area itself. So it is a very modernized sound system that they use along with the video screens.
Oh, that's impressive. Okay, if it's done by voice, then my concerns are much less. If there's a person interact, if they were just touch padding something and then driving off, then I think it'd be a bigger issue. But with that system, it sounds like should be.
Yeah. Now on the interior, they usually when they modernize the interior, there will be some touch screens that if you don't want to interact with a human at the counter, then you can go ahead and peck away at a screen inside.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so do we have any further discussion on it? All right, so we have, do we have a motion to approve or deny the minor modification?
I'll make a motion to approve the minor modification with the additional condition of these. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Pagano, did you have further commentary?
No, I was gonna second your motion.
With the addition of the oh God.
Screening of the dumpster.
Screening of the
Yes.
dumpster.
With shrubbery.
Condition
Plants.
is the word I was looking for. The addition of the condition for the screening of the dumpster.
We want some sort of a landscape plan or landscaping added to the site plan prior to endorsement, showing screening and a planting schedule to screen the dumpsters, correct?
Yes.
All right, so it's a motion by Mr. McDonald, the second by
Second.
Mr. Pagano. Any discussion? Okay, I'll take the roll. Ms. Pagano,
Yes.
Ms. Rojas,
Yes.
Mr. Geller,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay, thank you very much. All right, item.
We got A&R plans.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. I'm glad there was no condition on the temperature of the fries. Thank you.
Next time. Careful.
All right, item 5. Shane, I'm going to ask that we take 815 Bedford Street first.
Sure.
Then I'll sign off for the night.
Oh, lucky.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, whatever order. We don't have to do order of operations. We can.
Well, I have to recuse myself for the other.
I understand.
All right, so can you bring that up, Shane?
I'm not bringing anything up.
Ms. Baptiste, do you still want?
Oh yeah, I gotta let you share. Sorry.
I'm here, but I can't do anything. Push the button. Okay, I got the button.
I still call you Miss Baptiste, but you're Mrs. Baptiste, right?
I am Mrs. Baptista. Yeah,
Baptiste, I apologize.
It's all good. It's all good. All right. 815 Bedford Street, 2 parcels. There it is. Just kidding. We've seen
It has
somebody-
staff review. It has the frontage on both. It was a condition of approval as per the 815 plans. So I don't have any issue with this. As well as we put conditions in the approval, talking about change in ownership in terms of cross easements and stuff too. So, that being said, no issue here on my end or our end.
Okay, and then Romney Road is a private road, so that's where they're getting their frontage, correct?
For lot B, yes.
All right, do we have a motion to endorse?
So moved.
Mr. Geller, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. McDonald? Any discussion on the endorsement?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, Mr. Pagano.
If I recall vaguely, when the discussion was initially about this property, I know there were some concerns from folks about the road itself, Romney Road, where the retaining wall is. Have any of the issues of that been addressed as in relation to any development that would be on lot B?
Yeah.
We approved the plan to maintain a 25-foot buffer in the wall around the whole property.
Yeah,
Okay.
815 Bedford Street was approved, with those considerations in mind.
Okay, I just want to make sure I just want to make sure my memory was correct on that one and stuff was addressed.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so a motion and a second to endorse, is that correct?
Yes.
I'll take the roll. Ms. Pagano,
Yes.
Ms. Rojas,
Yes.
Mr. Geller,
Yes.
Mr. McDonald,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
All right, let me know when you're free, Pat, to sign off.
Well, I'm gonna sign off. I mean, I know down below we have Elm Street violations. I mean, if you want to update the board on those, I don't need to sign back on for that.
Yeah, I'll be quick for those guys. Yeah.
All right, but I'm gonna sign off then. Everybody have a good night.
You too, Pat. Have a good one.
Bye, Pat.
Okay, next up, we have another A&R plan for Lot 2A on Leonard Street, formerly 259 Summer Street, map 48, Lot 164. I don't think we need to relitigate this one too much.
No, no, this is the line you saw in the previous site plan. That's it. We're representing the two lots. We're only changing two lots now as opposed to the three. So this shows only two lots being changed, reconfigured to reflect the zoning variance that was granted.
Yeah, the only comment I have on this is that we'll just need the recording information on this, as well as 815, I guess. And that because Pat cannot sign off on this, I need 2 board members to come in to sign off to allow for them to record this document. Other than that, we have no issues with this, as previously discussed with the special permit.
Okay, excellent. Do we have a motion to approve or deny the request?
Motion to approve.
By Ms. Pagone, do we have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Gaylor, any discussion?
Sure, let's drag this out for another 58 minutes.
Don't tempt me. Ms. Rojas,
Yes.
Ms. Pagone,
Yes.
Mr. Geller,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Okay, you too.
I'll be
Moving
quick.
on to other business. Yeah, take it
Or
away.
we just
Sam.
go down
Sorry.
go down the line.
Yes, sir.
Board items for next meeting. It looks like we have at least maybe 1 or 2 items on the next meeting. Nothing too crazy. So I'll get some information to you guys ASAP. Board reports. I sent some information over for some CPTC trainings. If anyone is interested. Additionally, if anyone wants to attend the AARP Design for All stuff, that's a free webinar they talked about earlier. 434 Elm Street, I don't have any updates on that. 900 Elm Street, there was a site visit last week with DEP, our new conservation agent, interim town manager, as well as some inspectors that they noted some issues. So DEP is on top of that site regarding planning board action. I would say that the DP stuff is a little more pressing than some of the planning board stuff. So we're watching it, but I think there's larger matters that we're keeping a note on it prior to. It's still a violation, so we're dealing with it. But other than that, I don't have anything in my planner's report. I'll get some minutes to you guys sooner than later. Just playing catch up, and other than that, I'm all good.
Mr. O'Brien, just for clarification, I've kind of been reviewing the Elm Street situation a bit. Is my understanding correct? They built an entire bridge across the protected stream there?
You're talking 900 Elm Street?
Yes, sir.
There was work done beyond the modification that came before the board that wasn't inspected, reviewed, or approved. So there's some crossings that exist. There are some impervious surface that exists. There's engineering that hasn't been reviewed or inspected. So there's a lot there. But
Crossings being a nice way to put bridge. In this
bridge.
case.
Yeah. I don't want to refer it to as a term. I don't know what the engineering term is. But yeah, there's a wetland crossing that shouldn't be there.
I'm sure they're gonna have a very fun time with the EP.
Yeah, so I'll keep you posted as that rolls along, just to keep you guys informed.
That was all for me. Thank you.
Cool. But other than that,
Well, I guess we would move on to adjournment then, unless everyone wants to hang out for another half hour.
I'll keep that in mind. Next time I have an early flight, I'm just gonna leave in the middle of a meeting also.
good
Motion
idea.
to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Ms. McGowan. Do we have a second?
I can second that.
Goodness. Good God, that was too long of a pause.
Wow, everyone wants to stay tonight.
I want everybody to be involved tonight, you know?
Any discussion about the adjournment?
Oh, please,
No?
God, don't let there be any.
Tie vote at the end.
Mrs. Rojas,
Yes.
Mr. Geller,
Yes.
Mrs. Spigot,
Enthusiastically, yes.
and I'm a yes. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all so
everybody.
much.
Good night, everyone.
Night, everyone.
Have a good one.